Okay, good evening, everyone. Joining us at the Town Hall meeting room in addition to those on Zoom. This is Kathleen Holland for the record. We will be starting the meeting in just a minute. The applicant presenter has arrived and they're just getting themselves set up.
Okay. All right, let me call the Inland Wetlands Commission of New Canaan to order. Today's Monday, June 17th. Since Angela Jameson, who's our secretary, is not here, Beth Sanford, would you become acting secretary tonight?
Yes, I will.
Would you take the roll, please?
Yes. Dan Spitanik,
Here.
Sandy Redden,
Here.
Angela Jameson,
Absent.
Beth Brunelli,
She recused herself.
Beth Sanford here, Priscilla Woke,
Absent.
Katie Owsley,
Here.
Adam Ramirez.
Absent. Absent. Katie, would you take the place of Priscilla Woke tonight?
Yes.
Katie? Yeah. Alrighty, we all have a copy of the agenda. Any comments, questions? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the agenda.
I will second it. Beth Sanford.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 20th. You all have a copy of that? Any deletions, corrections, or whatever? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. We had a special meeting on June 3rd. Again, you have a copy of the minutes. Do you, any comments or deletions or anything? If not, Katie, do you want to make a motion to approve?
I move to approve this.
I second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll open the regular meeting quickly. We have two applications to hear on July 15th. Application number 1W2423 513 Main Street. And the other is, excuse me, application number 1W2424 100 Michigan Road. And the agent on this will be Barbara Wilson. Oh, 109,
Yep.
109 Michigan Road. We'd like to schedule a site visit for these two applications on June 26th. It's a Wednesday at 8 o'clock. Can I have a raise of hands of people that can make it? Katie, no?
She's away.
No, she's
No.
away. Should we go along with it? I guess we have to. don't we?
I will double check with the other commission members and I'm sure we'll get one more that will make us a quorum. And by the way, you do have a quorum tonight,
We
President.
do have a quorum. All right. So as you know, we began our public hearing in May at the May meeting and we continued it to tonight. And it's application number 1W2414 677 South Avenue, Town of New Canaan. And agent is Tiger Mann, Director of Public Works. Now, before we move along, I wanted to kind of give you an idea of the presentation agenda for tonight. First, if there are any members of the general public, either in person or on Zoom, we'd like to hear your comments, your questions, or whatever. We'll hear those first. Second, we will hear the applicant's summary rebuttal to the comments and questions the intervener had presented at the May meeting. Third, we will hear from the intervener. We would like to hear their rebuttal to what they just heard or read from the applicant and any new information they would like to give. And finally, we will conclude the public hearing with any final thoughts and comments from the applicant. Members of the Wetlands Commission will take notes and are encouraged to ask questions and provide comments after each presentation. And they will also likely ask for clarification on various subjects. After all of this is completed, I will adjourn the public hearing. As you can see, and then we will wait until the July 15th meeting to have an open discussion on what we have learned during the May and June meetings, and then make a decision if to approve both the intervener's notice of intervention and the application itself. Also, as you can see, we are 3 members short tonight. I'm sorry they couldn't attend, but they will be attending the July 15th meeting, and they will be listening and reading transcripts of tonight's meeting, and that'll make hopefully 7 of us that will be able to discuss this, and we hope to, and we intend to make a decision unless something comes up during this meeting on that night, which would be July 15th. Any questions? Any questions? Okay.
The only point of clarification, and I was a little bit distracted, but in this type of application where you have an applicant and an intervener, the applicant does get the final word. So
Right.
concluding remarks are given to the applicant to make. You may have said that.
I
I'm
did
sorry.
say that,
Apologize if
yeah,
you did.
yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Is there any other thing to clarify? Nothing?
No.
Okay. All right. So let's continue. The first up is are there any members of the general public in the audience? I see there are none. Anyone on Zoom that would like to comment and ask any questions?
I can confirm there are no hands raised on Zoom, and the members that are on Zoom are either in the meeting or participating in discussion. There's no members of the public other than those on the.
All right, number 2 on the list. Then now we hear from the applicant to give his or her rebuttal to what the intervener presented to you, and any new information you might like to give too.
Okay, well, Tiger Man, Director of Public Works for the town, thank you very much for delaying us slightly while we had traffic concerns, trying to get our staff and our consultants down here. I'm joined at the table by Mike Segan and Josh Ignatz from Richter and Segan, Harry Roachfield from McCord Engineering, and Bill Kenny from William Kenny Associates. So, well, I'll lead off by just saying that the intervener came up with several comments. I'm going to address the first 2, and then I'll let the rest of the staff and the consultants answer the remaining portion. So the first was that the interveners have claimed that there's a host of perceived deficiencies in the property itself, in Waveney, in the existing stormwater infrastructure, and that those deficiencies are contributing to the stormwater runoff issues on their property. And they contest that this project should fully solve all those problems. We feel that necessarily isn't, it's not necessary for us as the applicant or the town. We're responsible for addressing the stormwater management as it relates to this proposed project, not necessarily the overall concerns from the Tashians and Bernallis, and not necessarily from the entire property. Waveney's 300+ acres. We can't necessarily in this application solve all drainage problems that might be associated with the property itself. And we do acknowledge that, there's drainage concerns on and within the area of the intervener's property. And a solution, while it's beyond the scope of this project, we have taken during this application additional steps to revise the proposed Capo field plans and to further address drainage concerns well beyond what is required for the project itself. I mean, one, we're actually utilizing new criteria that comes about as of July 1. The new drainage concerns we're actually applying to this at a considerable cost. And two, we're looking at other things that we could do. And we also acknowledge that the town will work with the interveners, with Luke and Beth and the state to help address the concerns, the stormwater management issues that are beyond the scope of this proposal. I reached out to Luke this afternoon. We had a very nice conversation, and I iterated the fact that we're the town. We're here to help our residents, and while it might not necessarily be in the scope of this project, we're here to help their concerns, either address them directly if they're directly associated with the Waveney property, or help on their behalf with the state, since 106 Old Stamford Road, the street that they live on, is a state road, and we have to go through the state for some mitigative measures that might necessarily come to pass. We've tried in the past to work with the state. We've come up with plans in the past. They've been denied or not necessarily approved. At present, their overall policy or their feeling as to those mitigative measures that we had proposed prior, we feel that they've had a lessening of their policies. We might necessarily be able to do some of the things that we had proposed at the time. So I'm confident that we'll be able to help the interveners with their stormwater management issues that are beyond the scope of this project itself. And then they claim that the application itself was incomplete. We can only offer that we submitted the information, the town submitted as the applicant, information that we understood was required, and the application was accepted and put on the agenda. If the director of the commission requires additional information, we would certainly happy to provide that. But at present, we contend that our application is complete before the commission, and we're happy that you're adhering it at this point in time. So now I'll turn it over to Mike and his staff, and he can address the remainder of the intervener's claims and then answer any questions that you might have.
Good evening, Mike Segan with Richter and Segan. Our presentation tonight is twofold. First, to just discuss the minor changes in the plan, minor from a site design point of view. Mostly the changes have been in the storm drainage system, which Harry will talk about in detail shortly. But I do want to reiterate that there have been no changes in terms of work or activity in the regulated area.
Say that again. No changes. What? Say it again. No changes to what?
There is no changes for work or activities in the regulated area, which this commission regulates. And then the second part of our presentation is to respond to both commission questions and comments from last meeting, as well as intervener comments. It'll parallel the written responses that we submitted on Friday to the town. Next. You can see here, this is an updated plan, which reflects the changes. And when you look at it, it doesn't look like there are any changes, because on the surface, there really isn't. The biggest changes are the storm drainage system, which is underground. And probably the only material change above ground relates to a grove of trees that replaces an existing grove that had to be removed for the expansion of the storm drainage system. We did replace that grove with a grove of native trees consisting of maple, oak, and flowering dogwood. As both the town engineer have made a comment and interveners consultant has made a comment, the final location of those trees, while it's not in the regulated area, will be done. So we work around the new expanded drainage system.
Let me ask you, do you have a pointer or something? Where are those trees?
Can you see my cursor?
I can't.
Don't
Yeah,
don't
you're
go
up
so
there.
Do you
fast.
see it?
Yeah, up, look in the,
On the right-hand corner?
look at it like
Here you
1
go,
o'clock.
up.
Dan, is this easier? I
Huh?
have it right here.
Oh, okay.
We're gonna have to get bigger
I got it.
pointers. They're not, sometimes you don't see them.
Can you see that now?
Yeah,
Here,
yeah.
he's gonna share my
I got it, I got it.
Okay, next. And as I mentioned, there's no change to regulated activities in the plan, which includes mostly landscape improvements at the outer portion of the upland review area, which Josh is showing there, it's shown on this drawing of that small, it's really upland review area, the small island, isolated wetland and the park maintenance facility. And we reviewed that in detail last time, but there are no changes to that. Next. Before I turn it over to Harry on the storm drainage changes, I wanted to respond to both one commission comment and one intervener comment. The rest of the team will respond to the other commission comments, and Tiger already has to two of the intervener comments. And these comments were submitted in writing, our responses on Friday. So the commission, I assume, has a copy of those as well. The first, really, one of the commission comments or questions I'm going to respond to. The commission asked the applicant to provide information regarding the planned synthetic turf maintenance practices and the effect those practices might have on the displacement of infill material. We've worked with John Howe, who's a Parks and Rec, you're all familiar with John, who actually maintains the fields, and he was helpful in providing this information. And I'll kind of summarize. The town has successfully maintained its existing synthetic turf fields for over 15 years, having never observed adverse downstream effects. It should be noted that a characteristic of the proposed turf system for Coppo Field is what is referred to as a root zone. This is kind of unique to the baseball field that we're talking about. The root zone is a layer of tightly threaded fibers within a turf pile, which allows for the containment of infill to a greater degree than other fiber systems. With respect to stormwater displacing the infill, the root zone system, along with the extraordinary high infiltration rate, will prevent the infill from floating free. With respect to litter removal, maintenance personnel will use leaf blowers at a very low setting. The litter material rests atop the turf, and personnel are trained not to blow the litter in a manner that displaces infill. And there have been no issues from John's perspective. And then lastly, John also indicated that they have never observed infill being transported downslope and into downstream drainage systems. They have also indicated they do not power wash, as they would displace infill material. And that's not a technique that's used on synthetic turf fields. The town instead relies almost entirely on natural rainwater to rinse and cleanse the fields. And this has proven to be an effective approach used by the town for many years. So I don't know if there's any questions on that one particular issue. The next item I wanted to respond to was the intervener's claim that an alternative assessment is required by the applicant. It's number 3 in our response items to the intervener. It's the applicant's position that since the proposal does not include direct or adverse impacts to the wetlands, there does not exist a requirement to address alternatives. That notwithstanding, the design team will consider several alternatives and provides a summary of those in the written dialogue. The first alternative would be to shift the field. I don't know if you can show just to the west and outside the upland review area line that's near the maintenance facility. This adjustment would reduce activity near the eastern wetland, but would increase activity to the west. Additional fill along the west side of the project area would be required. The area needed for stormwater infrastructure upstream for the western wetland would be reduced, cramping that a little more. The softball field would no longer fit and would thus need to be relocated to another site in Waveney Park. Additionally, the work proposed within the eastern upland review area actually improves protection for the wetlands through vegetative buffering and the installation of a wood fence to limit pedestrian access and litter displacement in that area. We went through that in detail at the last meeting. The second alternative we looked at would be to locate the field to a different site, which is obvious. An important purpose at the project's inception was to relocate the high school varsity baseball facility at or near the high school campus. Relocating to an entirely different property would defeat this purpose. Additionally, since this site is already a baseball field, relocation elsewhere within the Waveney Park property would have displaced other important park resources or involve potentially disruptive forest removal. The third alternative is one that actually we submitted initially, and that would be to only address the stormwater management for the 25-year storm, which is the current requirement from the town. This alternative would have reduced the size of the impacts near the western wetland by reducing the area of on-site infiltration, and was the original stormwater management approach for the project. At the direction of the town engineer and at a significant expense to the project, the system was expanded to address the 100-year storm. While the project is not subject to the town's soon-to-be revised stormwater management criteria, the applicant still seeks to meet this impending requirement. And then the fourth alternative is one we typically look at, and that's no project. If we literally did not change the existing field, this would actually allow the existing stormwater runoff to remain unchanged. And the fact is the proposed solution or our proposed project will actually reduce the stormwater runoff. So it's going to lead to an improvement in the issue or problem. If there's any questions on that, but I was going to turn it over to Harry to talk about the storm drainage changes in the plans.
I don't know. Push hard.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike. For the record, Harry Rocha with McCord Engineering, professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. Josh, could you just pull up my site plan? Thank you. So I'll go over a summary of our changes to our drainage plan and then go through the comments we received. The biggest change here to the detention system, as has been stated, has been increasing the design from a 25-year storm to a 100-year storm. What that entailed was essentially expanding the detention system by about 60%. It went from 150 Caltech 902 chambers to now 240 Caltech 902 chambers. We expanded that to the south towards Capo Field, elongating the system, so the spread of the system got larger. Due to that, we did have to sort of reconfigure where our water quality basin is located. It's still located to the south of the system, but it has a slightly different shape. It has the same function as it did before. It is still designed to receive that sort of first wave of runoff early on in storms and in the smaller storms. And that will be bypassed once the larger storms come through to the detention system. The detention system is still designed as it was previously to have sufficient capacity for the water quality volume, which has also been upsized to be 1.3 inches instead of 1 inch for the new 2024 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual for when this project first started. So we do meet that new quality for 1.3 inches for water quality volume as well. During our latest site visit between meetings when we were with Bill Kenny's office out in the field, we did notice a survey error on our plans. It was the tile pipe that we are connecting to under the access road was surveyed to be 10 inches. We found that was probably because there was a large bell end in the catch basin. Once we trekked down into the woods, it was an 8-inch pipe. So after coordination with the town engineer, we are going to upsize that pipe so it is properly sized now. In doing so, having the larger pipe area will decrease the velocity of runoff going to that channel and into the woodlands. By having that larger pipe size, as our design flow rate to that pipe is the same, but by increasing the area, the velocity will slow down. Also, another change we made that had come up last meeting was to armor that existing Drainage channel, I know Bill's going to want to go into that a little bit further as regarding the condition of that channel, but that is another change as well. We are providing outlet protection from that new pipe that we are installing within the channel. We relocated the outlet of the groundwater collection system, the smaller Caltech system on the plan, I guess to the west of the field. We relocated that outlet, so in the event that it does overflow, it will miss the southern catch basin there in the access road and run off into the woodlands itself across the access road, not into that channel. I know that was a concern at the last meeting. Another change that we had for the other side of the field, the northeast side of the field, where we are collecting roof leaders and under the grandstand with some area drains for the walkways, we have provided a hydrodynamic separator at the direction of the town engineer to provide water quality flow, which is comparable to the water quality volume for the runoff we're collecting at that side of the field. So essentially we will be cleaning the water that we are collecting before it gets discharged into the existing town storm sewer system back there. This watershed hasn't changed. We are still having a decrease in runoff from existing conditions to this town storm sewer system, but now we are also treating that runoff before it is discharged back into the system as well. We also updated all of our details to include pertinent elevations for all design storms as directed by the town engineer. I don't think we have to go into that too much, but it does show elevations for all the storms and how all those storms are contained within our outlet structures, our inlet structures, and the detention system itself. As I mentioned, we did update the drainage report for up to 100-year storm. The report shows that we have a decrease in peak rate and volume of runoff to the woodlands and wetlands for the 100-year storm. We did further dissect our watershed in our project area that discharges to the woodlands and wetlands, and we're showing a decrease in runoff to both catch basins as well as a result of this project. Josh, if you could just go over to the existing conditions drainage map and then the proposed conditions drainage map. So you'll see watershed E1B, which is essentially where the softball field is. That is the watershed of our project area that currently goes to the southern catch basin there in the road. And if we go to the proposed conditions map, you'll see that the watershed that goes to that area under proposed conditions is about half the size, maybe 60% of the size of the existing conditions. So although we're not directly connecting into that catch basin and none of our proposed improvements are being routed to that catch basin, we are still having a decrease in runoff to that catch basin just as a function of the area that will be routed overland or runoff overland to that catch basin. So I do think that is important after the discussion of the last meeting to make that clear that although we're not directly connecting to it, we are still decreasing the runoff to that catch basin that is more of the problem channel as a result of this project. I mentioned, I guess now I'll go into our responses to comments. First and foremost, that we incorporate the town engineer's comments. As they've sort of touched on, we have been working with the town engineer pretty closely and have had several discussions with Maria to incorporate all of her comments into our stormwater management report and site utility plan for the project. I believe we're at a point after the last submission, and I take it Maria agrees on our latest memo dated 6/14 that we have addressed all comments for the site plan and stormwater report as part of our latest submission. So I can say that we have incorporated all her comments into our latest submission of the site utility plan and stormwater management report. The commission also asked that we clarify where runoff from the proposed structures would be conveyed. This was primarily for the storm sewer system northeast of the field. Currently, there's two catch basins over there, sort of between Capo and I think that's water tower field number 1, that collect all the runoff over land currently. So that will still continue to happen for overland runoff from our project area, but we'll also be tying those catch basins into that system as those roof leaders and yard drains into that system, as I mentioned. All that runoff is conveyed north to the Woodlands past the Lapham Center. So not where we're connecting now, but it is also conveyed to the same woodland and wetland area, just further upstream from where we're directing our project for our proposed improvements. As I mentioned, we are adding a hydrodynamic separated treat runoff from our project before it is connected back into that storm sewer system. Another comment, intervener comment number 4 was additional drainage analysis to the outfalls that lead into the wetland area, as well as additional mapping of the overall watershed. I sort of just touched on the first part of that question, how we've broken down our watershed to analyze both catch basins and the runoff conveyed to each under existing and proposed conditions, and we did show a decrease in peak runoff to each catch basin. So we've sufficiently answered that part of the question. The second part is to look at the overall watershed. And Josh, if you could go back to that slide. As Tiger had mentioned, the town of New Canaan has worked with the state and other consultants in the past for this portion of where Lapham Road and Old Stamford Road meet. So we were able to obtain this old watershed map that was done by Land Tech Consultants, I believe in 2006. And you'll see that they delineated a watershed shown as that outer red dashed line that all conveys to this point. That seems to be the concern, just upstream of the intervener's property, right on the, I believe that's I can't see the north arrow, but the east side of Lapham Road. And you'll see where our project is located in that watershed by the hatched red area as being Copple Field, and is just a small portion of that overall watershed. So as Tiger mentioned, our scope of work is our project. We are ensuring and going above and beyond that we are decreasing runoff from our project. But as Tiger mentioned, our project is just one small area of this overall watershed that contributes to the downstream issues. And all we can do from our scope is make sure that we're mitigating any concerns from our project and ensuring that our project is not leading to any downstream issues, which we have shown in our drainage calculations. Intervener's question, intervener comment number 5, interveners claim downstream runoff from the proposed infiltration chambers will actually increase due to the presence of existing hard pan soil layer beneath the system. We have performed soil testing, including deep and percolation tests in the area of the detention system. We have identified a restrictive layer and an infiltration rate below the design of the proposed underground system. We ensure that the bottom of the system is at least 1 foot above the restrictive layer, as we typically do in New Canaan and have had great experience with. Our systems operating as intended with that practice. And that is just the worst case scenario for the system. As the system works to the west, it will be closer to 3 feet above that restrictive layer. And we also applied a factor of safety of 2.0 to the percolation rate we obtained in the field. So just to make the design a little more conservative. And we also designed the system to ensure that it will drain between storms. I know that was another question that came up in intervener comments. Using that factor of safety of 2.0 on our infiltration rate, we calculated that the detention system will drain out below our overflow structures within 22 hours. The CT water quality manual recommends 48 hours for that. So we're well beneath that. And by being less than 24 hours, you can really ensure that it will drain in between storm events. Question number 6, the interveners have suggested an alternative drainage model in which field runoff is conveyed to a point along the state route that is well south of the existing conveyance. In our opinion, this alternative is unnecessary and would significantly increase the upland disturbance associated with this project by trenching through that entire woodland and further up the access road. Well, we'll need gravity to get our stormwater flowing that way. We'll be going uphill up that access road and then across through the woods. That would just significantly increase the upland disturbance associated with this project. Alternatively, as Mike had mentioned, we have enhanced our drainage model to control a 100-year storm as opposed to a 25-year storm that already met the town's stormwater guidelines and has since been approved by the town engineer under her latest memo dated 6/14. And like we said in our drainage report, we've demonstrated a decrease in runoff to all points of concentration relative to this project in particular. I think that pretty much covers all of our changes in how we responded to all of the interveners and commission's comments. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Sure. I feel your pain.
Got it. Hi, Beth Sanford for the record. Harry, I took notes as you spoke, but I am not a stormwater management specialist nor a civil engineer. So I have a lot of questions for you. First of all, the increase from the 25-year storm to a 100-year storm is independent of the intervener's request. I think when we were here, let me put it as a question. When we were here last, you had already decided to do the 100-year storm evaluation.
Right, we were in the process of doing that design.
So that was not related to this intervener, the intervener's, objections here.
I think it sort of went hand in hand.
I just remember you were working on it in our last meeting on June 3rd.
Trying to remember. Yeah. Well,
I don't
it was brought, it was
written, but it sounded like you were doing it for their benefit, and I thought it was already something that was in the works.
No, it was already something that was in the works. The town engineer had brought it, her concerns to me and
Right.
to the design team at the time. And we had determined that, yes, the town should, at this point in time, adhere to the new policy, which will come out on July 1.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to try and understand some of the things you said, but what would be helpful is based on the evaluation of the interveners, you've made changes to the scope of the whole storm management system, which you said is now increased 60% in its size. And is that related to it adhering to the 100-year storm, or is that adapting to some of the concerns of the intervener?
No, that's specifically to adhere to the 100-year storm.
Okay. You mentioned that the water quality volume goes from 1 inch to 1.3 inches volume. What does that mean?
So that was a change in the latest iteration of the 2024 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. The previous manual had a 1.0 inch over. So the water quality volume is 1 inch of runoff for the entire proposed impervious area. So in our project, the impervious area would be the field and really any area that we're capturing. So we're computing a volume now that is 1.3 inches times that entire surface area. The water quality volume, that first 1.3 inches now is considered to contain the most pollutants that a storm could have. So we're containing all of that runoff within our system. It is not leaving, it is all infiltrating into the ground. So by providing that water quality volume, we're essentially ensuring that the majority of those pollutants aren't being dragged downstream. They're all being contained within our system and infiltrated into the ground.
Okay. You talked about you changed the size of one of the pipes, right?
Yes.
From
We thought it was a 10-inch pipe on the survey. We did further investigation. We determined it was an 8-inch. An 8-inch was undersized for what was already going there under the existing conditions. So, and with our detention system for the 100-year storm, we need a 10-inch pipe for our outlet. So we can't have that 8-inch pipe downstream creating a bottleneck issue. So we are upsizing and improving that pipe to the 10 inches that we need and
So
we had
you would-
thought it was.
That would have been in the plan regardless.
Yes, yes.
You talked about a covert that was something about the runoff into the woodlands.
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Again, I might not have gotten it all straight, but you talked about, I thought you said something about a runoff into the woodland, something with a covert that,
Is that on the northern side? That's on the, I think that's on the opposite side.
Yeah, on the other side of the
the northeast
the
side. that's what-
northeast side, yeah. So all that stormwater system over there, it was a question during the last meeting where that discharged.
Uh-huh.
And we went through some of our records on past surveys, and it all discharges north of the Lapham Community
Right,
Center
okay.
property or parking lot into the woodlands over there.
So I guess um, the bottom line is that your system, according to your analysis, will reduce the runoff that has been observed, but is that right?
Correct. For up to a 100-year storm event now.
And is that, do you have any like percentage or any kind of quantification that you can project that would be the case?
I don't have the percentages calculated, but in our drainage report, every storm event has the quantities there, which shows the existing conditions and the proposed conditions and how much we're reducing each one by, but I don't have the percentages calculated.
How much did we capture? We had a certain storm, time of a certain storm.
Yeah, yeah, so just looking at the chart, I mean, for the total area going to those wetlands, for the smaller storms here, the 1 through the 5-year storms, it looks to be about a 50% decrease in runoff. For the larger storms, we'll say 10 to 100-year, more of a 30% decrease in runoff, I'd say, without doing the math. And then same thing for the other side of the project where we're connecting to that existing storm sewer network. I would say for all storms, it's about a 30 to 40% decrease. Again, without doing the math, just sort of looking at these numbers here.
One more question. You mentioned at the end that it will drain in 22 hours versus the standard of 48 hours.
Correct.
What does that mean, the 22 hours?
So that means we have these overflow structures an overflow manhole that has orifices in it, that when the storms reach a certain point, it'll spill through those orifices, and our water quality volume that I mentioned is that area contained below the orifices. So all that runoff has to be retained within the system. So that 22 hours is the amount of time after the storm ends that the water will infiltrate into the ground and empty the system, ensuring that the system will be operable for when the next storm event comes.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Let me ask you, the grates on the road to the community center, they seem to be rather small. I don't know. How big is the pipe underneath that road there? Is that an 8-inch pipe or is that 10-inch pipe?
That's right. So that's what we discovered to be an 8-inch. We did think it was a 10-inch prior, and you're right, those basins are pretty old and undersized. They're actually just handmade out of brick. So we'll also be replacing that catch basin as well and putting in a proper size catch basin.
Is there 6 catch basins there or what?
There's only 2 that
Just 2?
yeah,
Yeah.
that are downstream from our project. But the one that we'll be connecting to with our overflow will be upsized to a standard catch basin. It, like you said, it is pretty undersized with a proper sump. Correct.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
With a proper sump.
a proper stop?
4 foot sump or 2 foot?
It would probably be a 2-foot sump. I think we have a 2-foot sump minimum on our plans right now that we submitted.
They can be cleaned out.
Correct.
Okay, yeah.
Will just be another net benefit to the wetlands. The basin that's there now has no sump.
How often will the water from a rainstorm get that far to one of these catch basins, one of these grates? Is it has to be, is it a pretty major downfall before it comes over there and comes down? Or is it all the time? Every time it rains, if the water accumulates on the field, it's going to flow over the bend and down into one of those grates? Is that it?
It's not every time. I believe it's the 5-year storm where it gets into the,
5 years, huh?
yeah, it gets over the top. But a majority of storms, the 1 and 2, which are 90% of the time, will all be contained within the system. And I think the important thing is that we're still reducing the runoff, I guess, that catch basin ultimately from existing conditions for all storm events, regardless of what's being siphoned out of our detention system. We're reducing the overland flow by so much, since this entire field is now being contained on site as opposed to running off overland to that catch basin.
Are those catch basins old? Are that's pretty.
Yeah, I would say they're
As old as the park is. I don't know how old the park is, but will they need to be replaced? In other words, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we are going to replace it. We're proposing
gonna-
to replace
yeah.
it, and I think it would probably need to be replaced soon, if not anyway. It's, like you said, pretty old. I don't know when that original access road went in, Tiger, but I would assume it was probably installed then.
But regardless, we were going to replace them anyways and then put in a better sump. So with a better grate on the top. So a standard grate on the
Yeah.
top, standard
Yeah.
catch basin top, and then a standard catch basin that we have throughout town. And the majority of our catch basins in town are a 2-foot sump. We have some that are 4, but the majority, I would say 90%, are all a 2-foot sump. And the highway department comes and cleans them annually. Excuse me.
And a bigger pipe under the road.
And a bigger pipe
Yes.
underneath the road. Right, which will then reduce the velocity, which will then reduce the scour.
Yeah.
And if we're going to address the outfall as well, to then armor plate the outfall, that actually helps reduce the velocity more and reduces the scour as well downstream. So then, there won't be any adverse effects of any of this water, albeit it'll be a less amount, but we'll be reducing that amount, reducing the effects going downstream with these mitigative measures, the catch basin, the additional size in the pipe, and then the armor plating of the outfall. Excuse me.
When the engineer for the intervener was here, he said one of the options is to redirect that water. Is that a possibility with you?
He addressed that.
Huh? Oh, you did?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
We typically do not, as a policy, try to relocate water from one location to another, because then downstream from that resident will now definitely
Right.
have a concern, because they'll say, you just gave me more water. So we try to work within the parameters that are given wherever the water is flowing at present. That's what we try to mitigate at that time. We do not move water from one location to another. You can imagine that resident has an argument immediately that you just gave me more water. And we would be hard pressed to say no, because we just did. So we do not do that as a policy.
So, we need to maintain the same discharge points for the existing and proposed conditions.
And
Uh,
as Tiger mentioned, he's got his public works cap on, not moving water around. I have my inland wetlands cap on. There's a fine line to still, you can't take all the water away from the wetlands. This wetlands is being fed by some overland flows, and that's how it historically works. So it is a balancing act, not to change that function that's happening currently.
Any other question? No?
Bill concludes, I just want to remind the commission members that Maria Coplet is on the Zoom call. So we should probably have a summary comments from Maria Coplet as well before we went to the interveners, I would suggest.
Good evening. Bill Kenny, Principal of William Kenny Associates in Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm a professional wetland scientist, soil scientist, landscape architect, and I have a degree in environmental management from the Yale School of the Environment, where a focus of my studies was on ecosystem and hydrology and studying how water moves through the land, our landscape, and wetland streams and all those things related to that. So I helped out with answering one question from the commission and a number of questions from the interveners. The one question from the commission is identified as number 3 on the memo that Richter Segan drafted. That was a question about how would the change in use of the field, perhaps due to additional people visiting the field, how would that change water quality? So perhaps a change in intensity, because there's two, when you have a development or redevelopment, 2 primary things that result in a change in pollutant or generation. And that is the change in the surface, the cover type, whether you go from forest to a parking lot at a gas station, you're going to have a lot more pollutants. Or you go from a trail through a park to Interstate 95, you're going to have, or maybe I should say a drive through a park, a small drive through a park to Interstate 95, you'll get more traffic on that in higher pollutant loads. So change in cover type and change in intensity of use. And I think the question was primarily focused on intensity of use. And so we looked at that, and with the change from what we found was there really, for this project, the change in use is not that, it's pretty minimal from a JV baseball use to varsity baseball use. And then when you combine that with the fact that there's no stormwater management proposed today, and that there will be stormwater management proposed, and then with maintenance activities at the park, I think the primary, or there's a potential for more trash or something like that, but there's park maintenance facility people that are there to clean the trash, pick up the trash, particularly after particular events. So I think that at this site, we're not changing to again, to a interstate or to a gas station, in that there will be a change in use, but they're pretty substantially, they're very similar in use. So I don't think there's that has a potential to cause an issue with regard to potential impacts to wetlands from stormwater runoff. Now, moving on to intervener, what we've identified as comment number 7. And this was a request for additional, there's a request indicating that they believe additional wetland mapping should occur. We typically, often properties are much smaller. You're dealing with a homeowner or something like that, and you just map every wetland on the property. But here you have a whole park, hundreds of acres, and you identify a project area and look at what makes sense with regard to wetlands in that area. And that is what happened here. And in my experience with this town and other towns, the mapping that was done is appropriate. We looked out surrounding the project area because there was really no wetlands on the project site itself. So we looked what's nearby. We went north, south, east, west, and went out until we ran into essentially a wetland area that was in roughly 100 feet from the site. And we mapped the boundaries of those wetlands within 100 feet. Certainly there's, so on the west side of the park, there is, or the project site, there's the wetland at the base of the slope. We mapped the eastern edge of that because that's what abuts the project. We didn't go over to the street and map the western edge because it's, in my professional opinion, it's not relevant, and it's not standardly what's done. And I agree, it's, I don't think it's necessary. So that is our response with regard to that. comment number 8 was that there's a claim that the impact assessment, the wetland impact assessment that my firm completed is not correct based on assumptions that we made regarding stormwater runoff. And we reviewed the project and reviewed the drainage evaluation completed by McCord Engineering by Harry and his colleagues, and the discussions that he's given this evening based on the water quality treatment and the reduction in peak discharge rates and the reduction in stormwater runoff to the wetlands. We use that information to base our conclusion that there would not be an impact. And I can get into more details if you'd like, but that's common practice. And then there was a comment number 9 that the impact assessment was incorrect because at the last hearing, I think I made a response to a question about the channels being self-armored, and then there was quite a bit of discussion for the rest of the meeting about my one comment about the channels being self-armored, and so I'd just like to clear that up a little bit. There are the two, let me see if I can, right here. We'll start with the map, but there's the catch basin here and a catch basin. I'm not sharing. I'm just drawing. Yeah. So can you see the writing I'm doing on the screen?
No, so.
No, you
right
can't.
Now we're viewing,
Because Josh is sharing.
You gotta be able
to share.
Oh, no.
that's okay. So you,
Okay,
he should just be able to share,
okay.
because it did come up.
Oh, I'm not gonna have it ready. All right, I'll just use my cursor. No, I was on the Zoom.
Oh.
That's why, I thought, did you say you saw it?
I saw it.
I
too.
saw it for a split second there.
Okay, yeah, I think, let's try that again. I'll change the color. I'll go with red, it was blue. This is a drawing function through Zoom, so it should work. All right. So we have what's known as the southern catch basin in this area and the northern catch basin. And we mapped that eastern boundary of the wetland at the bottom of the slope, which is roughly here. And we mapped an intermittent water course here. And then we mapped a channel here. I guess I used the word gully at the last meeting, but it's a drainage channel. We don't believe it was a regulated feature. We could get into that, but so water comes out of these catch basins at the north and at the south and go down these channels. If we go to the drainage maps and look at the existing and proposed, that I need Josh to help with. Yes. So you'll see here that no, it's not. That only this area drains to this southern watercourse. And then the rest of the project area drains to the northern watercourse, or I'm sorry, drainage channel. The existing conditions for that southern channel it's somewhere, the water drainage area is somewhere out here. So we're reducing the water flow to that southern catch basin just by changing the size of the drainage area. So there's no real improvements of significance. There's some minor grading within that drainage area, but reducing the flow there, not by Coltex or big chambers or just by reducing the drainage area. So we're taking that drainage area and pulling it into the drainage area for the northern catch basin. And that's where the field is proposed, all the improvements, the backstop, the dugouts and other features. And so I focused on the drainage channel to the north. And we could, first let's talk about the condition of that channel. And if we have some photos there, but that channel today is very well stabilized and not showing signs of excessive erosion. And so that's where that 8-inch pipe comes out. And of course, if that pipe is at times where water exceeds the flow of that pipe, it just flows over the surface of the road down into that channel. Josh, are you able to show the photos? Okay. So this is right at the outlet of that 8-inch pipe. And then if we just continue on. So this, I'm standing at that pipe at the top of the hill looking down, and the channel is right there. So since the leaves fell in the fall, there's so little amount of water moving through this channel that it's still mostly covered with leaves. So there's, and then that's existing conditions. With all of the stormwater management measures proposed, we're reducing those flows by 20, 30%, as Harry was describing. And next photo. This, I just walked further down the slope and just looking, the wetland is down at the bottom here. So we're getting close to the bottom of the slope. Next slide, please. Now I'm at the bottom looking up, and there's really just, again, this log has been sitting there for quite a while. It's decayed, and there's evidence of some water that flows through there from time to time, but not a lot. And no signs of excessive erosion in this channel. Next photo, please. Here's another view up, and you can see with the stone in the channel, the roots of the trees, that these trees have been there. These are large, significant trees. The roots have been there for years and years, decades. So again, water does flow through here, but not excessively or on at high rates or on a regular basis. And this is at the bottom. We're now standing roughly near the wetland boundary. You're not seeing a big, at the end of our eroded channel, you see a big delta of sediment that all came down the hill and ended up there. And this is well stabilized. There is a slight delta here, and that's been forming for decades and decades. And it's at such a minimal amount each year that the leaf litter's there and the plants continue to live there. So if it was an excessive amount, it buries the plants, and the plants, you're not finding significant vegetation. So that's the existing conditions. And then when we look at the proposed improvements for the storm drainage system, and maybe if we go back to the proposed drainage map, and also the detail for the drainage system under the field. Cross-section detail. I think this is, whoops, yeah, if you could zoom in on that detail that you had a second. Up in the top left corner, yeah. Because what's great about this project is you have a treatment train, a management train of a sequence of BMPs to manage stormwater runoff. And from, sometimes this works. There we go. From the top of the field down to the bottom where this drain is, and that's a flat drain. It's only like an inch tall and 12 inches wide. And these drains are 25 feet on center. We could look at a plan the way they're laid out. And so the bottom is essentially flat, and you have 8 inches of stone over that. And you get water coming through that, and the voids between the stones can account for 20 to 30% of that 8 inches. So you can get a couple inches. You could have a couple inches of water sitting in there, but it's going to make its way through those drains. Those drains are 25 feet on center, but you end up with, you'll never get that bottom exactly flat. You're going to get little divots. So you're going to find opportunities for water as it's going towards these drains to infiltrate into the ground. So these smaller, and that's not even accounted in the drainage. So as someone with a hydrology experience and education, looking at this, I am certain we're going to get some infiltration there, some treatment that's not accounted for in the design. And like on a parking lot, when they're paving, they have much more control over trying to make a smooth surface. You still get little dips. So you're gonna have all these little dips, opportunities for water. Maybe there's a hard hand nearby or something, but there's still gonna be opportunities for water to make its way down. Over that entire field, 300 or 400 feet across in 2 different directions, there's a lot of opportunities for water. So that's the first part of that treatment train. And then you go to if we go to the drawing, please, with the drainage. If we could zoom, yep. So this shows those flat drains that are about 12 inches, that are 12 inches wide and 25 feet on center. And then, so that all that water is collected and it's taken to this inlet control structure here. So the water comes in there, Harry was describing, you have this concrete structure like a manhole with openings in it. Some go into one pipe, some go in another. The lower opening, the smaller one, diverts water to the water treatment, water quality treatment. And when water flows for larger storms or higher, they can't get through that pipe quick enough, so that the water rises up in the manhole and then it goes out the larger pipe and goes to the Coltex system. But the water quality volume, we talked about the 1.3 inches. It had been 1 inch for 20 years. That is based on a 90th percentile. The state and the federal government has done a tremendous amount of studies over decades and found that if you get 90% of the storms, that's 90% of the water volume. And that's what they call the first flush, because a storm happens on average every 3 days. You get pollutants accumulating on the surface, and that first flush washes it off, like sweeps it off. If you can capture and treat that, you're able to maintain water quality and in wetlands and downstream streams and rivers. So this water quality basin is designed not only to capture that 1.3 inches, 1.3 inches is equivalent to that 90%, but I think it's 50% oversized, that the volume is even larger than that. So you're getting way beyond 90% of the storms, 90% of the volume being treated. And this being an open vegetated basin, it is very effective because the water flows first through the surface and it ponds. So you have opportunities for settling as the water's ponding in the basin. Then as the water moves through the vegetation on the surface, you're getting opportunities for filtering and absorption to that vegetation, the leaf surface of the plants. And then it goes through the root system where all the roots are. And with that root system, you get a lot of soil microorganisms, bacteria, and things like that help to transform those pollutants and capture them. And this does have a liner, so it goes into another bed of gravel at the bottom and goes out a under drain. And a nice benefit is that this is what is called offline. So the large storms, sometimes you might have a basin like this to treat those small storms, and you might get sediment that you've trapped as you would like in the basin. And then a huge storm comes through and resuspends it and pushes it down every once in a while when you have a large storm. This is designed to take those large storms and put it into the infiltration basin, into the Coltex. So those large storms are going to get diverted and go into the Coltex. Just the first part of the large storms go into the So we not only capture all the small storms, but we capture the first part of the large storm in that water quality basin. And then you go into the Coltex system where your primary objective is quantity control at that point. So whether or not you're close to the water table or not, this water doesn't need to be cleaned because we've cleaned the important water that needs to be cleaned. That's the beginning of a large storm or just the small storms themselves. The large storms, when you think about it, they occur once every 5 years or 10 years or 20, whatever year you want to pick. They're very infrequent. You treat the first part of it, and then by the time the tail end of the storm comes along, all the pollutants have already been moved off the surface, and the water remains relatively clean coming off of these surfaces. So you focus primarily just on the quantity after you get by that first 1.5 inches or so. So with all of these measures, we're reducing the peak discharge rates to both of those catch basins. The southern basin, just by making its watershed smaller, its drainage area smaller. The northern basin, by providing all of this storage and treatment, increasing the size of the pipe. So if you have an opening with a certain amount of volume passing through it, and then all of a sudden you make that opening bigger, its velocity is going to decrease because you're not changing the amount of water, just the opening is flowing through. So the velocity decreases, which decreases the potential for erosion. Nonetheless, the town, to be extra cautious, is proposing a riprap at the end of that pipe to provide extra stabilization. But just by the reduction in peak discharge, you're providing that protection. And one thing I want to say is after similar to studies that have been done about water quality, they've done studies about channel stabilization, and they've studied streams throughout the country, throughout the world, and determined that a 2-year storm accounts for the vast majority of erosion in a channel. And the state guidelines takes this into consideration. And on a redevelopment project, they ask that you take the peak discharge for a 2-year storm and reduce it down below 50%. And on that northern basin, we're reducing it down to below 40% for that channel. So that channel is very well stabilized today, treating all the water, reducing the peak discharges, reducing them below the recommended rate that the state guidelines has. And for all those reasons, it's my professional opinion that this field can be constructed and used as designed and maintained in a way that will not adversely affect the wetlands or watercourses that are downstream.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't know what to ask. That was well done, yeah.
Katie, do you have any questions? If you do, you can turn on your mic.
I guess my only question was that the pictures we saw from the intervener last time where he was in that, then they all came from the other catch basin, the southern one. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Bill, Beth Sanford, for the record, can you just point where you were, the pictures that you showed us on the map?
Yes. Oops. So those pictures were taken in that area.
Okay.
From top to bottom. Right?
Yes, top to bottom.
And at the bottom, is that
That's the wetland.
106?
Oh, no, that's the wetland. So the wetland extends further off the page and then 106 at the, off the
Okay,
top of the
I
page.
see. Okay, I got you.
Anything else?
Anything else?
We have more? No. No. Who's next?
Or Ms. Maria? You wanted to
What?
hear
Oh, you want,
any comments from Maria Coughlin?
sure. How many more do you have?
Present, we're done, then,
Oh,
you know,
okay, sure.
we're allowed after the intervener, right?
I have questions because we didn't ask questions of Mike after his presentation.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's not your fault. I'm just curious, you're talking about the landscape improvements. So it had to do with the trees that you're planting and you're doing, and how is that different than the previous plan? That's a change in what you're doing?
The only change is the grove of trees.
Right, that's what I was
Yeah.
referring to.
Everything else has stayed the same because we haven't really modified anything on that. On the east side where
Right.
we're in the upland review area where we've made improvements there.
So what was there, did you have some trees and you've changed the kind of trees you're gonna plant, or are the trees in addition to the plan?
In the area where the expanded detention system is,
Uh-huh.
it's underground. We were saving some of the existing trees in there, but the expansion of the system is calling for the removal of those trees. So we have to remove those trees. There was a nice oak in there, but most of those trees are not what I would call high quality trees.
Uh-huh.
And we're replacing them with native, really good quality trees.
So planted a little in a different spot because you have to. right?
Yeah,
From where- yeah.
we're replacing that grove.
Those are the circles there that were,
Proposed.
yeah.
Yes, I don't know if you can zero in.
And how many trees is that approximately?
If we zero in there, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 new trees.
So that's a plus for the.
Yeah.
For the ecosystem,
Yes.
for the aesthetics.
Aesthetics, they're native.
Yeah.
Native material. Not all the trees that are in there now are native.
Okay. That's it.
Okay. Maria?
Maria, are you?
Good evening. Yep.
Oh, there you go. Great.
Hi there. Good evening, Chairman, members of the Commission. Maria Coplet for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. As outlined in our revised drainage review memo dated June 14th, 2024, the applicant has satisfactorily addressed our comments from our original May 15th memo. The recently updated plans and drainage report dated June 10th and June 13th respectively reflect modifications made to address comments from Public Works and Engineering. We find the proposed stormwater management design, including proposed field surface drainage, first flush surface measure, hydrodynamic separator, and subsurface stormwater retention system to be consistent with our Town of New Canaan drainage policy, including future updates to said policy, which will be effective July 1st, 2024. I just had one comment regarding the planting that Mike was just discussing. We did have one comment at the end of our latest memo that we do want to make sure that those proposed tree plantings will be coordinated with McCord Engineering, just based on the expansion footprint of the subsurface system. So just keep in mind that the final location is not necessarily as shown on the graphic that's up on screen. Any questions?
Maria, Kathleen Holland for the record. I had one question during Harry's presentation. He was talking about, I just have to go back to my notes. The factor of 2.0 for the confidence of the storm management system, I guess, draining between storms. Are you comfortable with that confidence level as far as the stormwater system being able to handle multiple storms and drain in between those storms?
Yes, as Harry mentioned, it's actually, his model is showing less than 24 hours, as opposed to, a standard of up to 40 hours, 48, 40 to 48 hours. So the fact that it actually has the opportunity to drain quicker and make itself available for back-to-back storm events, it is reflective of, as best as possible, what existing conditions are.
Okay, thank you. And I guess my thought is really, it's not really draining the system, it's infiltrating is really what we're talking about, that the
So I think
stormwater.
I think it is important to address this as a retention system, correct? Not necessarily a detention system, because there is a significant amount, as both Harry was alluding to, and also Bill was talking about, that it's our smaller storm events are infiltrating into the ground. It's the larger storm events that are just detained and then released, but we are retaining a significant amount of water.
Thank you.
Let me ask you this question. Do you have running water at these baseball parks? I know, in other words, can a player go to a fountain and drink water, or do you have water there, or is it bottled water, or
There's a proposed fountain water.
fountain water?
Proposed,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
at the field, yes.
At this one field or all the fields?
It is throughout, there's not a lot, but there are throughout the high school campus.
Okay.
And then we have a water fountain at Mead, larger field at Mead, the smaller fields at Mead, the Melick and Gamble. And then there's a fountain at the tennis courts, one at the
Tennis
water
courts.
tower turf fields.
Yeah, on the side, but I'm really talking about, Waveney Park. This one we're talking about, you're gonna have running water there, or a fountain
Yes,
water?
there will be
Yeah.
fountain water
Yeah.
there. That's correct.
Do you sell, soda there and snacks and things?
There won't be right at Copple Field here. There will be restroom facilities.
Restaurant facility?
Yeah, under the grandstands, restroom.
But you can't buy.
At Dunning, eventually there will be both bathrooms and concession that are open to the outside to facilities like this, the long-term Dunning
Where
master
will
plan.
that be? Where will they be fit?
So that concession stand, Richter and Segan is
We're
working
still
on.
working on that?
Yeah, we're working on it.
okay.
So that's part of a multi-year phase plan for Dunning itself. So right now we're in phase one, which is the press box. Subsequent to that would be work on the circulation for parking lots. And then phase three is the concession stand and increased bathrooms at
Yeah.
Dunning itself. And that concession stand, as Mike noted, will be double facing. It'll be open for games at the stadium and then open for games at the water tower turf field or the tennis courts or the track, events at the track where people can come over to the concession stand and utilize it there.
You have the apple cart at Mead. Are you going to have something similar to that out there?
Correct.
You are, huh?
Yes, that's the plan. Is to mirror the success of the lodge, Apple Cart or Mead Park Lodge at Dunning.
That's very successful for you, isn't it? The apple cart. Boy, I'll tell you.
Yes.
Yeah. Anything else? Well, you have anything else?
We have nothing. We'll wait
Just
for the
stick around,
interveners
yeah.
and then we'll come back. Unless you have any other
I'm
questions.
just talking about these guys here. But you are going to stick around.
Oh, absolutely.
Good.
Right.
All right.
If you don't have any questions at this point, then we'll wait to come back.
We're going to take an intermission anyway. 5 minutes.
Thank you.
All right, let us continue. Luke Tashian, and yes, fine. You're up next.
Alexander's gonna come on to one first, and then our engineer is going to present, and then I'll just conclude with our conclusion.
Good evening. For the record, Alexandra Mark. I'm a wetland and soil scientist. I'm also a geologist and hydrogeologist. And today we're going to have more details of the project. Last time we were just kind of having an introduction, and today we're going to have a little bit deeper dive into the details. So I will follow the report which we received from Bill Kenny at the last meeting. And I just wanted to respond to it. I did realize that on Friday, there was another one submitted, which kind of fits into my comments anyway. So he recognized short-term impacts, and I would like to just take a look, a little bit closer look to the short-term impacts. So there will be none per report, but if you look at the map a little bit closer, you can see that this whole area, which I don't show the entire field area, is going to be disturbed. What's going to happen? They're going to remove the topsoil because they will have to install the drainage. They will have to start excavating for the trenches. And they're going to be having a huge stockpile area in here. I'm just showing a section of it. This is going to be the entire topsoil scraped from the entire field and stored. During this process, there will be most likely some sorts of equipment moving the soil around. So there's going to be a compaction, and also a few of the trees are going to be removed from the edges. So those 2 trees are going to be removed, and also the trees which are here are going to be removed. So all of it is going to create more stormwater runoff during the construction activities. So we now have lawn, which is absorbing the stormwater management. Stormwater is also infiltrating because there's a natural soil there. During the construction activities, we're not going to have the vegetated cover. The area is going to be, again, the topsoil is going to be removed, so we're going to get a little bit closer to the hard pan. So the infiltration is going to be more limited and absorption, and we're going to have more runoff. So as you can see that all this runoff from 6.5 acres is going to be addressed by the single line of a silt fence and supported by hay bales in some areas, not the entire area. Per the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control, 1 line of silt fence can only address 1 acre of land. The report says there are no steep slopes and the area is already developed. The area is not already developed because it's a lawn. It's a pretty natural, even though lawn doesn't have a huge ecological values. But in terms of stormwater management, it's much better than impervious surface. And also there are slopes. So for example, this area of the slope, it's 19%. That's pretty steep. Also, if you look at the stormwater patterns, which are going to be moving from the disturbed area, basically we'll have 2 areas of concentration. I wish I can show you the entire map, but then you wouldn't see clearly the picture. So for example, here I'm showing in arrows how the stormwater is going to be moving, and it's going to be concentrating here and hitting against a single line of silt fence. Now below, if the silt fence is going to be bridged, then the area, the stormwater runoff with the mud from the construction site is going to be reaching this basin, and this basin discharges to, as we remember, very unstable intermediate water course. This concentration is going to happen over here. As you can read from the slope, it's going to be, the water is going to come from 3 different directions, concentrate here, and most likely try to use the existing ditch down the slope. There is no stormwater basin or sediment basin rather. So the Connecticut guidelines for soil erosion and sediment control for this type of construction strongly recommend that a sediment basin is provided, or basins in this case, because this is a pretty large site, and also there are flooding issues below. So during the construction activities, we don't have any stormwater management. So let's say we're going to have 100-year storms during the construction activities. Basically, the single line of silt fence is not going to do much, and the entire slope is going to go down towards Old Stanford Road. So we do recommend that the stormwater management and the soil erosion and control measures are going to be improved and properly addressed. And if this is not addressed, then I believe that during the construction activities, this construction is going to have direct impact into the water course due to the pressure of the stormwater runoff concentrated running towards the watercourse naturally. Under the long-term impacts, I'm going to discuss source of pollution, stormwater quality measures, landscaping plan as a mitigation measure, poor soil condition at the site, and lack of stabilization of the receiving channels. So the applicant haven't really spent much time to explain how the artificial turf works and looks like. So I thought that I would take this opportunity to kind of explain what layers are usually included. So at the base, we have gravel, 2 different types. So this is for the stormwater collection. And then we have a pad which separates the fine grain infill above and the gravel. So the gravel wouldn't clog. So the drainage is going to be very efficient. Then we're going to the lawn or to the artificial grass, which are blades, the green blades. They have to be vertical, and in order to keep them vertical, you have to give some sorts of infill. So usually the bottom layer is sand, and the top layer is the rubber pellets. The applicant is saying that their actually turf is going to be much better. It's not going to have that much infill, and the infill is going to be locked in, so it's not going to be moving around by the root zone. And the root zone is going to be created by additional plastic fiber. So if you compare the natural playing fields, which is one of the 4 alternatives by the applicant, the artificial turf actually can get very high temperatures during the summertime. If you have 80 degrees day, the temperature at the field could reach 120 degrees. That's why most of the time the fields are not being used during the summertime, which actually is good because usually the school is not operating and not that many people uses the fields at that time. However, environmentally, we have high temperature, and when we have storm event, obviously the storm water are polluted with thermal pollution. So now we have very hot water going down to our water courses. So natural lawn is an open space because obviously there's no hard surfaces, it's an open space, even though grass may not have high ecological values, but again, stormwater quality, filtration, stabilizing the soil, etc. There are some of those benefits. Also, natural grass offers habitats to plants, insects, soil microorganisms, and other wildlife. Artificial turf, on the other hand, is basically a synthetic pavement which impacts the water quality and does not offer any environmental values. And also impacts the temperature of the field. So the microclimate around regular field is moist and is less hot, vice versa with the comparing to the turf. Now the blades are made of microplastic. Also the rubber infilled consists microplastic. So all this microplastic is going to be released into air, soil, and waterways. And there's a huge problem right now because not only you probably heard about microplastic in the ocean, which is a huge problem, but now we are finding microplastic in our drinking water, in soil, and also in air. We're breathing it, basically. The independent study shows that up to 8% of the blades annually is being worn off and come down with the stormwater is injected to the air or stays in the soil from the artificial fields. The clamps or the rubber contains heavy metal. The most significant one out of them is zinc, and zinc is very toxic in aquatic environments. And DEP, Connecticut DEP, did a lot of studies and warns against the zinc as a toxic element. We did talk about PFAS, and the applicant says there will be no PFAS. There's going to be testing done. However, the testing is not really accurate. Just recently, Environmental Protection Agency has recognized this as a everlasting chemical or everlasting chemical which doesn't decompose in the nature, but also it's cancer causing. So this is a huge problem. Unfortunately, we have so many types of PFAS. We have over 1,000 different ones, and only few of them had developed testing, lab testing. So, and the standard for the turf fields is 100 ppm. So some of the PFAS are being missed. So I'm not really sure and confident that this is going to be 100% PFAS-free environment. And the fields are typically supposed to be replaced in 8 to 10 years. And that's a huge problem because you can't really recycle them. They just have too many toxins. So in Connecticut, I believe that the only place to go is in Massachusetts, where they are accepting the hazardous material, and the disposal is very expensive. And also in terms of the environment, this is basically a product which will never decompose. Stormwater water management, and I will touch upon 4 areas, and I would like to show them on the larger map so you will remember where they are. So here at the top left, we have the intermediate water course, and then above we have the inground infiltration system and overflow structure. To the right, upper right, we have the ditch or the stormwater channel. And then we have to the lower right, we have inground infiltration system, 240 units, and we have stormwater detention system. I mean, the stormwater basin, sorry. Stormwater detention basin. Stormwater detention basins are working very well for large parking areas because we have a lot of sediment, and the basins are really good at accumulating the sediment. The water brings it in, and then the sediment settles because it's heavy. And then most of the time from those parking areas, large parking areas, we have a lot of sediment-borne pollutions. So they will just set up at the bottom with the sediment. And then during the maintenance procedure, you can basically just scoop them out and take them out. So you're collecting them and there is no problem. However, the source of pollutants in here is not a parking lot. There's not going to be sediment because there's no source of sediment. We're going to have pretty clean water system, which is going to be efficiently collected from the artificial fields. And the artificial fields are full of the microplastic, of the rubber particles and dust, and all those heavy metals, which are going to be collected and brought to this basin. So there are going to be waterborne pollutants, which are really difficult to extract. These are PFAS and zinc. And we have also the ones which are too small because they are micro size. So they are going to be basically floating within the water column. And it will take them a lot of time to settle. And they will not settle before the next storm event. So they're going to be probably pushed out with overflow. Now I would like to talk about those trees, and I know that the landscape architect was talking about it, but he didn't really give you a clear answer what the change is going to be. As you see, those trees here around the stormwater basin are going to be removed because of the expansion of the inground infiltration system. So the applicant is proposing new trees, and they are going to be native trees. So this is really great. But as you can see, that 2 of them are placed over the infiltration chambers, which are very shallowly installed. So there will be no space for the root system to expand. Also, the root system may interfere with the infiltration, which is needed, and efficiency of those structures. So I believe that this plan has to be revised. Also, if you think about it, there's 240 inground infiltration chambers that are 4 feet tall and they are really large, and they're one next to another. So basically, when they're going to be filling up and the water will try to get out of it, the whole area around is going to be probably saturated for a pretty long period of time. And then next to it, you have the stormwater detention basin, which will always also try to infiltrate. So this area will be pretty saturated. So I'm not sure how those trees are going to be behaving there. Now, the last thing about this slide is I'm going back to the detention basin, and you can see that there's an under drain. So the stormwater manual is requiring that if you have poor soils, you have to have under drain under the detention system, because you have to make sure that the basin is going to be draining. So you can see that there's a pipe, there's an under drain. Now we don't know where this pipe is going to be connected. So this is potentially additional discharge, which hasn't been disclosed where it's going to be connected. So you can see this dashed area across the basin. So this is the under drain, and we don't know where this drench is going to be discharging. So from the experience and observations of the old detention basin, which was done for the existing artificial turf, actually the under drain keeps running way longer than the rain event, and really supplies a significant amount of water. Also, the basin is going to be planted with native plants. Just looking at the existing basin, in the middle of the basin is only Phragmites. There are no native plants left. However, there are some remnants here. So somebody tried, but they didn't survive those lack of maintenance. And then along the edges, we have nothing but mugwort, and both of them are invasives. Now, lack of proper stabilization, and I know that the applicant is really dancing around it and doesn't want to admit that the intermediate water course is going to be impacted. So I just seen that they moved the overflow from this 8 inline infiltration system, but guess what? This still, topography-wise, is going to be draining towards this catch basin and towards the water course. And they're saying, oh, there's going to be no increase. I understand this, but if you demolish the house and you do a new drainage, you have to make sure that the whole system works. And doesn't matter how much water you're going to be discharging, whether or not this is going to be decrease or increase, you are going to be overflowing. Your fields are going to overflow. And actually, even Bill showed that there's a portion of the there's a drainage basin which is going to be still draining towards this area. This is the drainage basin which includes the new natural field. What's the field? The natural one? The one which is not going to be with artificial field? There's like smaller field in the corner.
Softball.
Softball, thank you. So this one is going to be still draining towards this water course. So how come there's nothing? And then I will also demonstrate to you that in your regulations, you recognize stormwater as an impact on the wetlands. So there is going to be stormwater going clearly to this channel. Whether or not the applicant is going to be pushing those infiltrators back and forth, there is still going to be an impact. And if they don't stabilize this channel, and somehow Bill showed you the other channel where everything else is going to go, and I will talk about it in a second, but the one which is highly eroded, nobody ever mentioned about it, and no pictures were shown. So I'm showing again the same picture, and you have the depth of 6 feet here, and even little of the water will still keep continuing eroding the channel and bringing sediment all the way to the wetlands. And I think this is very important that this is going to be addressed. And I think Bill misunderstood my question. I didn't ask for mapping the wetlands. As a matter of fact, the entire wetland has been mapped. The flags are there. Maybe you just did a section, but actually the flagging continues all the way to the retirement center.
Home.
Yes. So the whole wetland is actually flagged. But anyway, so if you look at all those pipes here, and I would like to understand them. So now you have 10-inch pipe coming into the catch basin, and then you have 15-inch pipe taking out the water of the catch basins to the water course. But then you have another pipe over here, which is going to be the overflow, and this is 6-inch pipe. And then you have 10-inch pipe coming from here. So you have 10, 15, and 6. And the out is 15 on the very steep slope. How this, I mean, not really on the steep slope, is going to go actually under the driveway and discharge to the water course. How this can fit this extra. So if the extra is not going to be fitting into this catch basin and this pipe, the water is going to be going around it and is going to be eroding all around this slope. Also, it is important to show the wetland and show the steepness of the slope and document the existing condition. And definitely this intermediate water course is going to be affected by the storm water coming from the site. Also, it was mentioned that, now the drainage basin is going to be smaller. Are we now draining less? Are we changing the hydrology and hydro period of this water course? Because now we're going to have less draining. So definitely there are some changes, and I think that they're supposed to be explored and documented and explained. Now we have 240 in-ground infiltration systems. These are a lot of Coltex in one location. And I think you don't really see very often such a huge system. And we don't know how the system is going to behave. I just learned that this is not going to be a detention system, but it's going to be a retention system. So it means that they don't really care that anything is going to be infiltrating. So that's a change, because we've heard over and over again from all of them last time that everything is going to be infiltrating into the upland area. Now we have a different case scenario. Anyway, so if this is not going to be, if the chambers are not going to be infiltrating into the ground, then they have to empty somehow. And I would like them to explain how they're going to be emptying. And the only way out is to this channel to the woods, because there is no other way out. There is no evaporation from the closed system. So now, yes, I agree with Bill. Actually, he showed the channel, and this was the only channel in the woods which is not being eroded and is pretty stable. However, now we're going to get a little bit of an extra, because we have 10-inch pipe draining the in-ground infiltration system, and we have 8-inch pipe coming to the catch basin. So now we have 8 and 10, and the receiving pipe is 8. They're saying, well, we're going to change to 10. Is this enough? You're going to have 8 and 10, and now the receiving one is going to be 10. May not be large enough again, but this is going to be change. So there's going to be excavation on the slope, very steep slope, which leads towards the wetland. And now we are seeing that this is going to be ripraped. How are you going to access the wooded steep slope? Are you going to bring a I don't know, a truckload of gravel and just dump there? I think there's an opportunity to see actually well-designed channel and well-stabilized channel with the use of stone, with the use of vegetation. This will be a great filtration mechanism for the stormwater received from the in-ground infiltration system. So then we can ensure that the delivery is going to be a clean water going to the wetlands. And it's kind of funny, because the applicant is saying, oh, we're going to have such a good infiltration, and we're going to have such a good stormwater renovation, and then we're going to discharge it on the slope, and it's going to start eroding, and the end product, which is going to go to the wetlands, is going to be not a clean water. So I think this is really very important to address. I believe that the plan doesn't have proper stormwater quality measures, and this is why. So as you remember, the artificial turf is going to be yielding pollution, which is going to be a steady source of pollution. So now you can see this storm system, which is going to efficiently take the water out of the area. There's going to be no detention, because the system is designed to keep the fields clean, dry, and expel the water as quickly as possible. Now, some of those pipes are going to be actually dipping into the groundwater, so they will also drain the groundwater. Isn't this an increase of discharge? Because this is not stormwater. Now we're talking about groundwater. And you can take a look at the deep test holes, and you can realize that, yes, in some of those drainage pipes, we're going to have some of them covered by groundwater. Now we're going to the 8-unit infiltration system. And this one also is going to be sitting in the groundwater table. So again, there's going to be no infiltration. Now, if we remember, all those toxins which are in the fields, they are going to be having straight contact with the groundwater. So the groundwater is going to be exposed to direct pollution. And this is due to the in-ground infiltration system, 8 Coltex being into the groundwater, and also the drainage, which is going to be underneath the fields. And here is the challenging soil condition, which actually is throughout the site. That's why I believe that this site is not really good for the turf fields, and it's not good for such a huge detention system, because there is no infiltration, and there's going to be a lot of water coming out. So the red line is actually showing the hard pan. Hard pan is a very compact layer in soil, which doesn't allow infiltration or very low infiltration. As you can see, those chambers are sitting very close to it. So the bottom of the chamber here is only 1 foot and then goes all the way to 2 feet. Again, there's not going to be infiltration, but we just learned that this is going to be not detention, but retention system. So here is the summary of direct wetland watercourse impact. So the sediment, the lack of the sediment basin during the construction activities, it's clear if we're not going to have proper stormwater management during the first phase, then there could be a huge disaster during a heavy storm event. Then undersized pipes, the undersized pipe in the stormwater detention basin would like to know where this discharge is. Stabilization plan for the existing stream. So all those streams supposed to be stabilized to make sure that when we are going to discharging any water on the very steep slope, which is 40%, it should be clearly stabilized, and the details should be provided. We have water quality issue, because, like, for example, the small infiltration system of 8 in a row, they don't have any pretreatment. The water goes straight in and out. The stormwater, because of the poor soils, obviously there's not going to be the infiltrator, but we just learned that this is not a detention, but a retention. And then climate change, and actually the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual is recognizing that the detention systems which we are designing today are going to be undersized very quickly. We're going to have 8% a year of stormwater increase, of rain increase. So this is going to be creating a lot of huge storm events, and they are going to be more frequent and heavier. Like, for example, 2 days ago in Florida, we had 20 inches of rain in 1 day. In a week. But this is like a huge storm, and we're going to have more and more of them. Just in 2018, we had our 100-year storm, and in 2019, we had 7 inches falling within 24 hours. So these are not that unusual and not that common. They're going to be actually more intense. I don't want to go through all of this, but at the last meeting, one of the commission members asked what are the impact from the sediment, and biological, chemical, and physical. I put this in the table, and this is actually also in my report. So this is the bearing of benthic, bottom living organism, habitat degradation, decrease in biological diversity, also of aquatic eggs, larvae, and fry, clogging of fish gills, increasing disease and susceptibility, damage to food chain, decrease in biological diversity, reduced ability to grow plants or on eroded land. Also chemical, water temperature increase. When we have turbidity, the water is heating up faster. Nutrient transport, again, stormwater, sediment-borne pollution, water temperature increase, lower dissolved oxygen levels. And then we have physical, reduction of the channel, erosion, blockage, reduce flood storage capacity, et cetera, et cetera. So in section 7.4 of your regulations, the section is talking about upland review area. And regulated activities means any operation within or use of a wetland or watercourse involving a removal of or deposition of material, removal, erosion, deposition, sedimentation, alteration or pollution. We have pollution coming from the turf of such wetlands or watercourses, and discharging of stormwater on the land within the following upland review areas is a regulated activity. And now the sixth number, it says areas where the total area of the disturbed by any activity is cumulatively more than 1.5 acre, and any disturbed area is upgrade from a wetland or watercourse larger than 5,000 square feet, situated at least in part on the same property on or property immediately adjacent to this property. So basically, because of the activities and the disturbance areas more than 1.5 acre, and the wetland is bigger than 5,000 square feet, the entire area of the activities is a regulated area. That's per your regulations. Therefore, we need more information, and we have to have more details and better plan. We need a better stormwater management, and we need construction phase during the construction phases during the site development. Soil erosion and sediment control measures should be provided. We need sediment basins. We need better barriers to prevent against erosion. Site monitors should be provided. There's nothing, you can have silt fence, and most of the time when you go to the construction site, you have silt fence, which is just the stakes are pushed to the ground, and the bottom is not embedded to the soil. Therefore, everything can flow underneath. And this is standard way of installing silt fence. I've seen this over and over again. Even though you have silt fence, it's not working. And this can really create a lot of sediment going down the slope. Therefore, we have to have a monitor. We need to have someone who's going to be monitoring, providing reports and reports to this commission that everything works perfectly and is prepared to the upcoming storm. The channel, both of them, the intermediate watercourse and the one which is now going to be under more pressure because there's going to be more water going towards it, supposed to be properly armored, and hopefully we can have some planting plans. So there's going to be physical and biological support for the flow. Topography, we really need the topography going down to the wetland because we want to understand how many channels are erosive and how much of the water overflowing is going to be using those channels, and what the condition and also steepness of the slope, because the design of the channels will depend on it. And then the undersized pipe. So the applicant just said that they're going to be replacing one of the pipe. I'm not sure. I think they're supposed to be also take a look at the pipe which is discharging to the intermediate watercourse and see whether or not there needs to be the help is needed. So yes, I believe that the entire watercourse, wetland watercourse system is supposed to be shown on the plan. We don't have to have the entire one, but the entire edge and also topography. And the planting plan should be revised so the trees are not going to be growing on the infiltration system. And the under drain discharge point supposed to be explained where it's going to be going, and alternative to the stormwater management. Due to the poor soils, I think that the applicants should explore whether or not maybe split the huge system and make it more efficient in terms of some infiltration. So maybe they can use there's plenty of space there, the other fields, where you can just put the in-ground infiltration system into it, and they can still be playable and wouldn't interfere with any of the uses of in the park. And this is all. This is the end of my presentation. I'm here if you have any questions.
Jim,
Yes, yes, I am.
Okay. Questions?
Yeah. Beth Sanford, on one of your earlier slides, I think I read that you said that the construction will create a 19% slope along the edge of the,
It's
Water
1919, yes. So yes, there's a section which I am showing with the red arrow, which is 19% slope.
and how did you calculate that?
So I measured the distance and then the height.
Okay. Regarding the turf field, you've mentioned the effect of the heavy metals such as zinc and others that are toxic to the aquatic environment. Just to check that, did you take in consideration that this is not, the infill is not made of tires, it's virgin infill?
Well, I think this is just a fancy way of virgin because everybody is against the pellets and they were just, there are so many papers written about it, how toxic they are. So I guess now the sport field company came up with this like virgin one. It's like what virgin means, rubber is a rubber. And yes, I agree that the tire, the shredded tire is way more toxic. But what is the virgin rubber is still a rubber. And I hope that the applicant can provide us the profile of the turf fields and the content because we don't know. I'm just guessing from the partial information I've heard here at the meeting.
So the comments that you have in the bullet points on that slide are kind of generalized for artificial turf fields, and some of it may not be specific to the composition of.
Well, I think in general, this is what it is. And I don't expect that the fields are going to be much better in terms of toxicity. But again, you know, it would be good to have the profile and the content. This way we can be sure and we can just analyze all the details.
Well, it's hard for us to make judgments based on speculation.
That's true. But the turf fields has been for many years and they haven't changed that much. The infill varies. The grass blades, now because PFAS is a contaminant, so the turf industry is trying to get rid of PFAS. I don't know what kind of cover is going to be subsidized with. It may be more toxic than PFAS, we don't know. So
That's more speculation, Alexandra. And as you know, we cannot
so I agree.
speculation in any form. It has to be evidence-based and scientific-based. So stray away from speculation because it's not going to help anyone here to reach a conclusion on how to weigh this
I agree.
the overall evaluation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just the last quick question is the photo that you showed us, which we saw a couple of weeks ago from the photos that the intervener had collected of the channel. Yes, there. Can you show me where that is on the map?
Yeah. Actually, this is not really shown on the map. So you have this section of the channel, and then another one is joining, and it's kind of off the map. But when they both join, that's where the most severe erosion occurs, and that's where you have this 6-foot deep channel forming.
But it's beyond the wetlands and the water course.
No, it's not because so the wetland boundary here is not shown on this plan. So we don't know how far it is, but the channel is eroding. The channel is an intermediate water course. You can see the flags here. There's one flag, wetland flag here, and one wetland flag here. So basically this is a regulated area and it flows all the way to the wetlands.
Okay. All right, thank you very much.
Jim, are you on Zoom? Do you want to log in? Oh, I don't know how he switches in.
Oh, okay. Stop sharing. Okay. Share the screen.
Jim, do you want to go? Is he muted?
He appears to be muted. You need to unmute your mic. Jim, we can't hear you because your mic is muted. Can you unmute your mic?
Unmute.
There we go.
There you
Hello?
go. Jim,
How clearly can you hear me?
clearly.
Thank you. For the record, again, I'm Jim Sakonchik. I'm an engineer, and I'm here to advocate for Luke and Beth's concerns on drainage. And I would like to read for the record this information, which leads to an important point, and that is, it is, as I understand the DEEP requirements, incorrect to mix the water quality basin and the detention basin, but under the DEEP water quality manual, they have to be separate and distinct. Over the weekend, I was carefully reviewing the plans, and I'd like to read this letter I worked on today into the record. I have reviewed, can you see when I press this button to circle? Is that visible, the circle?
Yes.
Thank you. That's where I'm reading. I have reviewed the stormwater management report prepared for Copel Field, Waverly Park, as revised. I wish to point out the need for additional drainage report data that is necessary for the town and my client to properly understand the drainage impact. The report is missing technical data known as flood routing. Flood routing should show numerically and graphically for various storm events how much rainfall, runoff before and after development, runoff into detention ponds, as well as runoff out of detention ponds. It would also quantify how long the detention ponds would drain in order to be available for the next storm event. The software McCord uses generates these flood routings. And in the report, they talk about some technical TR50 type standards, which I love, they're excellent, but they also, with the press of a button, would give you the numerous pages that would show that data, which for a person like me is very useful. Continuing reading, it should be noted that the area impacted exceeds 5 acres, so another required permit is a DEEP stormwater permit for construction activities with a stormwater pollution prevention plan, an SWPPP technical terms. The above mentioned flood routing calculations are required for this permit. So they do have that step needed. Next paragraph. I am also confused by the description of the water quality volume and how it relates to the detention system. As I read the report, they are one and the same. As noted on the attached markup, the Coltech chambers are being used for the water quality volume and being used as the detention system for flood routing. If this is true, then the design appears in violation of the DEEP General Stormwater Permit as determined by Christopher Zone, PE of the DEEP, which I'll get to shortly. Next page. Now, this is just pointing out in their table of contents, and I'm just repeating the information that what we really need here is the flood routing calculations. The next page, I think, is the most important part of my presentation. And this is where I'm making a comment on their water quality volume computations. The underlying information here is directly from the revised drainage report submitted for Copo Field. And it notes that it has a detention system that needs a water quality volume of 13,071 square feet. Excuse me, 13,071 cubic feet. And they do have a detention system that exceeds that of 19,528 cubic feet. But this is measured below the orifice invert. And here says the detention system never drains once storm infilled. I'll get back to that. I got to correct that statement. They do have drainage for this detention system, but indirectly, that is the problem, because as I will point out, DEEP mandates that the water quality volume always is retained on the site and is not allowed to drain. A detention system, which is also required, is separate and distinct from any water quality volume basin. Now, I can defend that by noting previous work I was involved with, where this was a direct point of discussion, and my firm, together with Jacobson Associates, a firm representing a town in the middle of the state, they were the town's agent. And the question was whether or not the water quality basin has to be separate and distinct from the detention basin. My client knew that such a design would increase his cost, increase the volume stored, so he wanted clarity. And so I want to read this over here. The storage volume be provided below the lowest outlet structure, since it will operate as a passive system and not require monitoring and the adjustment of a valve. For verification, our office reviewed this matter with Christopher Zone, PE, of the DEEP Stormwater Section Water Permitting and Enforcement Division, in reference to primary stormwater treatment practices outlined in the DEEP 2004 Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual. Mr. Stone provided the following response. The DEEP General Stormwater Permits states that the water quality volume is to be retained. The definition of retained says to store and infiltrate with no discharge. And then he talks about fine print if it's polluted, but we don't need that. Point is, it needs to be retained. So now, this is a excerpt from Reagan and Kagan's applicant's response to the commission, and it was mentioned tonight. In number 5, they make a statement here, and on the bottom, it talks about the water quality basin. It says, last sentence, also the detention system is designed to drain between storms. Well, that's good. A detention system should drain between storms, but a water quality basin is not to drain between storms. So consequently, according to DEEP, this system does not meet their regulations. And I can say that with authority because, as discussed, we went straight to the source, asked the question, and got a definitive answer. Now, let me just talk a couple of points. And my joke is when I exercise, I can pick up 40 pounds with one finger. That means with my hand, I can pick up 200 pounds. Well, some of the things I'm going to talk about relate to that type of logic. The site soils can have limited absorption capability as functioning in a detention basin. And the reason I say that is because if you dig a hole anywhere, even if you're above the water table, the soils are damp. So they have some water with them already. And if you do the calculation, you find that only 10% of the soil volume is available as voids, which means if you've got 1 inch of water in your detention basin, you got 48 inches, but if you just take the first 1 inch, it takes 10 inches of soil to absorb that 1 inch. And it takes time for that to happen. And in fact, because the water is saturated, it would be incorrect to use a permeability test to measure how fast that happens, because a permeability test is done on unsaturated soils, which means it can absorb in 3 directions. A good analogy is you kid spills water on the tabletop, you take a paper towel, just dip it, the capillary action sucks up the water. In a bottom of a detention basin, there is pressure to push the water vertically down into the soils, but that is a different type of situation. It is saturated, and you're only allowed to move the water in one direction. And it would be a different type of test, and that is called a permeability test. And for these type D soils, the permeability rate is very low. Now, it's still good because the permeability functions 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, so it does absorb water, but the rate in which it absorbs is irrelevant to any kind of storm, because a storm acts very fast, and the amount of water that can permeate through percolation, enter through permeability into the soil is irrelevant in terms of quantifying flow rates. What I'm trying to say is detention ponds are good, but you need a positive drain to mitigate the storm afterwards. My joke is you can take your bathtub you have at home, take 2 55-gallon drums, pour it into that bathtub in seconds. But the rate in which it leaves is throttled by that 1.5 inch drain on the bottom of the bathtub. It can go no faster than that drain can take it. That is how a proper detention basin is done. It shows the water coming in, and the drain has the water going out, and that is quantified in the flood routing calculations that I believe should have been submitted to complete the application. Now, the reason this is important is because here is the water quality should retain the first flush of 1.3 inches. Magic words here, first flush. In order to retain the first 1.3 inches, that initial stormwater, which contains most of the pollutants, has to go into the water quality basin first, either fill it up or, just like, even if it's still full, the water comes in, mixes, the water in it is mostly less polluted because it had bacteria and time to work on it. So some of that water might leave the water quality basin by overflow, but the initial water, the dirtier water, stays mostly in the basin. And the reason they have a water quality basin of 13,000 cubic feet. Now, here is, right from their report, the volumes of runoff they're showing. And they're showing that even for a 1-year storm, there had 18,000 cubic feet of volume. And that would be pretty much going in there. And that exceeds the 13,000 cubic feet of the required water quality volume. So that is why you want to retain that first flush. What you don't want is the current situation where you have like their 25-year storm. There's 85,000 cubic feet of water going through their current design. That would resuspend any amount of that initial 13,000 cubic feet of the water quality volume. It'll just mix it, dilute it, and send it away, which defeats the purpose of the water quality basin, and that has been verified by the DEEP. And again, this is from their plans. And you can see that the bottom of the stone is at elevation 316.55. The outfall pipe from their water quality basin is at 316.5. The top of the basin where they get in their 19,000 cubic feet is at 322. So they are draining this. This is not a water quality basin. This is a detention pond. So there's a fundamental thing missing in their plans, and that is a water quality basin in addition to a properly sized detention pond. And they're separate and distinct, and they should, in the record, put flood routing information on the plans. So that is my presentation for tonight.
Jim, Kathleen Holland for the record, the information that was provided by the intervener through Luke, I only had 3 pages, and it looked to me that you had many more pages. So we will need those pages provided to the office.
I can submit those. I think
That would be fine.
Also
Yes,
his
it's actually
presentation.
only one new page right over here, which I will provide. I just was
this is
thinking
his
about it
presentation.
today, and I thought it was a
Okay,
useful
great. Thank you.
addition to the report.
Jim, so just email me your presentation, which is this additional page, and I'll submit that as well.
Thank you.
Kathleen?
Yes,
Kathleen, it's
Katie.
Katie Owsley. I'm just wondering if we could have Maria weigh in on this water detention system. Some clarification from Maria would be great.
Good evening. So one of the things that, just in listening to the presentation tonight, and this is why I tried to stress it earlier, is that to be clear, the water quality volume is being retained as part of this design in the system. The orifice at the outlet control structure is at an invert elevation that is above the water quality volume. For reference, the water quality volume event is a 1.35 inch event, which is compared with a 1-year storm event, which is 2.7 inches, and a 2-year storm event, which is 3.3 inches. So the water quality volume event is smaller than your 1 and your 2-year storm events. This system, as designed as an infiltration system, is a retention system that in these smaller storm events infiltrates into the ground. And in your larger storm events, has the ability to detain and control the discharge, but it is still an infiltration system. It's just that in the larger storm events, the peak rate of flow is addressed by your outlet control structure. But again, just to reiterate, the first orifice elevation, so the opening at your outlet control structure in order to release water, is above your water quality volume elevation.
Thanks, Maria. That's super helpful.
I would ask the engineer who designed this to comment on that, please.
That's not appropriate. You're controlling the meeting, so if you're okay, you want Harry to comment at this point?
Is he here?
Yep. he's here.
Yeah,
I don't know if you want to go back and forth. or
Absolutely.
I would wait. I would maybe let them conclude if they're concluding.
I didn't know he was.
As,
So we're gonna go back and forth.
Let them finish and then we'll come up.
Yeah.
as an interviewer, we have a right to cross-examine witnesses, so we could question if we wanted to. I mean, I'm okay waiting to the rebuttal, but I think he should answer the question.
We're not saying he won't answer the question, just I think we don't want to go the back and forth, because that's not.
That's
beneficial
fine.
to anyone. So, are you concluding?
Jim, are you done with your presentation?
Yes, well, the reason I'm asking for him to clarify, because as I read his plan, he has the bottom of the stone at 316.55. He has a drain leaving this system, entering his outlet control structure at 316.5, even lower. As I understand that, he is totally draining these Holtec units into the outfall structure. So he is not retaining the water quality volume, but he is draining the water quality volume. And that is contrary to Engineer Stone's interpretation of what the DEEP requires.
Would you like him to respond now?
What?
If they're finished,
I'm gonna conclude and then he can address the question. Luke Tastian. I live across the street from this. I'm also the intervener. So the first point I want to bring up is something that ended at the end of Alexandra's presentation. As Mike Segan from Richter and Segan repeated at least 4 times during his presentation, the applicant continues to stress that there's no regulated activities here because there's nothing in the upland review area. That's incorrect. Their measuring the upland review area is incorrect. Their plans are incorrect. The form they submitted to DEP is incorrect. This is very basic. Usually step 1 should be to determine the upland review area. And somehow they got it wrong, or it's wrong on the plans. And all these activities that we've been talking about, like the building the pollution chambers, and there's dispute between whether or not the virgin rubber is as bad as a chip rubber and things like that. But as Bill Kenny said, there is pollution from this, and it goes into this collection chamber, which I guess is dispute about. There's a collection chamber the pollution goes into. That pollution chamber is in the regulated area. This whole field is in the regulated area. They don't have a proposal here where you would normally see outside of a regulated area. All this activity they are proposing in a regulated area, their upland review line is wrong. All their plans need to be corrected. And the statements that continue to be made about there's no activity in the upland review area is wrong. This is clear. Section 7.4 of the regulations defines an upland review area. Sometimes it's 50 feet, and then there's other circumstances in which it's greater than 50 feet. I'm going to read it for a minute, and this is in the letter that I submitted today. Okay. So section 7.4, which defines upland review areas, states the commission may set conditions under which a regulated activity may be conducted in upland review areas to assure that the activity will have no significant impact or major effect on inland wetlands or watercourses. Regulated activity means any operation within or use of a wetland or watercourse involving removal or deposition of material or an obstruction, construction, alteration, or pollution of such wetlands or watercourses, but shall not include the specified activities in section 22A40 of the Connecticut General Statutes. The important part of this statement on what's an upland review area now, italicized, which says, furthermore, any clearing, grubbing, filling, grading, paving, excavating, constructing, depositing, or removing of material and discharging of stormwater on the land within the following upland review areas is a regulated activity. Number 6, so these are areas in which what they're proposing is a regulated activity. Areas where the total area to be disturbed by any activity is cumulatively more than 1/2 acre. They're proposing to do these types of activities to 6.5 acres. In any disturbed areas, upgrade from a wetland or watercourse larger than 5,000 square feet, at least in part on the same property and or properties immediately adjacent thereto. The plans they've presented to the record show wetlands greater than 5,000 square feet down gradient from the area which is greater than 1/2 acre that they propose to do this work. As a result, as a matter of basic reading of the New Canaan wetland regulations, all their activities they're proposing are in a regulated area. And when they keep saying there's no activities in a regulated area, they're wrong. When they keep saying we're going to be discharging our pollution into one of these chambers, it's not a regulated area. That's wrong. When they say in the application there's only 2,551 square feet of area in the regulated area, that's wrong. It is 281,000 square feet. It is 6.5 acres of activity in a regulated area. You can also look at section 2.1.33 of the New Canaan Inland Wetlands Regulations, which also defines a regulated area and carries through the same definition. So this definition is used twice in it. There's no question, based on their own plans, that they're proposing to do 281,000 square feet of regulated activities, not 2,500 square feet. The DEP form's wrong, their application's wrong, their plans are wrong, their statements are wrong. This is a major proposal in an upland review area. So that's the first point. And there might be a question about whether or not the virgin rubber is better than the unvirgin rubber or the chipped rubber and this and that. But as William Kenny stated, there's going to be pollutants discharged from this that go into this collection chamber. And there's going to be some pollutants that don't go into the collection chamber. But either way, this is all in a regulated area. The second point I wanted to address, because Mr. Kenny brought this up, is that in the reports or the answers to the questions submitted last Friday night, in opining that this will not have an adverse effect on the wetlands or water courses, he said runoff that flows, I'm quoting him here. He said, runoff that flows west from the project improvement areas will discharge to a very stable channel, which is immediately downstream of the northern catch basin. There's agreement in that. He then goes on, because stormwater runoff from the project improvements area does not drain to other drainage channels west of the project, including the currently unstable intermittent watercourse channel that is downstream of the southern catch basin, the condition of these channels do not affect the impact assessments or its results. This statement that there's going to be no drainage to the southern catch basin is incorrect. We've heard today that there's going to be drainage to this. The drainage they're positing is not going to increase over the existing drainage, but his wetland analysis he submitted on Friday is based on his statement that there's no adverse impact because stormwater runoff from the project improvements area does not drain to other drainage channels west of the project, including the southern catch basin. That is not correct. Again, that's according to their own statements. It's important to us that if anything is going to be discharged into that severely eroded channel that is deep, that is eroded so bad it goes down to the water table, and there's a spring there, an artificial spring's been created. It's eroded deeper than I am tall. That if they're going to discharge anything into that, if they're going to ask this board to sanction any discharges into that channel, if they're going to ask for a permit to do anything to that channel, they need to restore it first. And they need to armor it. As Bill Kenny stated at the June 3rd hearing, there's two requirements for this not to adversely affect the channel. Requirement one, that the water volume and velocity not increase. They're saying the water quality and volume to that southern channel will not increase. Requirement two is that it be a well-armored channel. They're conceding now that that is not a well-armored channel. So based on their statements at the 6-3 meeting and his statements he submitted on Friday night, there's going to be an adverse effect on the wetlands and water courses from discharges into that channel unless that channel is restored and appropriately armored before they start discharging stuff into that channel. We've said a lot of times, we do not oppose this project in principle. We are not seeking to have them address all the drainage issues for this entire property. That's not correct. But we don't want the wetlands to continuously be trashed by this project. We're not saying it was intentional that this has been done, but before this board sanctions things, should make sure that some of these things get fixed so the effect is at least mitigated. In the statements that are blatantly incorrect, like there only be 2,500 square feet in the upland review area, and it's not being a regulated activity, and all these things need to be corrected. The plans need to be corrected, the application needs to be corrected, the DEP form needs to be corrected. In addition, they need to provide a study or report from Mr. Kenny noting that there is going to be discharge into this channel. So it's consistent with all the drainage plans they've submitted showing discharges into this channel. The discharges into this channel are coming from the relocated softball field. It's not just the exact same area. They're asking for this board to sanction discharges into that channel. They're saying in the same volume. I'll concede that. I don't have a way to argue against that. But according to Mr. Kenny, any discharge into this channel would be adverse. And that's also the position of our expert, and it seems to be the position of common sense. If it's eroding now and you keep doing the same thing, it's going to continue to erode. It's going to continue to flush sediment, all sorts of stuff down the hill into the river. So those are the 2 points I wanted to correct from the presentation today. I also want to go through, I'm hopeful that Tiger Man and myself and the experts can resolve this before you reach a decision. It seems like we're really not that far off. So I think it's positive there's not a vote tonight, but I want to make sure that our objections to this are in the record in case this goes forward. So I'm going to go through the reasons why we are objecting to the activities related to this. As I said a minute ago, the plans and the application are incorrect. They need to be fixed. You could not have a developer come here and show a 2,500 square foot wetland upland review area and regulate activity area, and then permit 6.5 acres, 281,000 square feet. That's significant. So the first step is it needs to be denied because their plans are not correct. And their statements are not correct. Second, as I just stated, the drainage they're proposing from the relocated softball area is going to go into that southern catch basin. And that southern catch basin needs to meet Bill Kenny's statement that even if the velocity and volume is not increasing, it needs to be well armored. We also believe that it should be restored before they start discharging water into that, for drainage into it. Because they're asking this board to sanction that discharge. The ambiguities regarding the plans, as discussed by Jim, need to be addressed. Whether or not these Cultec chambers are retention or detention, the height in which they're required to sit above the impermeable layer will depend on that. And those factors need to be addressed, because if these chambers fill up and then there's another storm shortly after that, all this water is going to blow down a 40-degree slope. The DEP, as Jim said, because this is a project that involves over 5 acres, has reporting requirements and drainage requirements. And those issues presented by Jim need to be addressed, including the flood mapping, the flood routing, and the other issues, because this project is 6.5 acres. They need that DEP permit. They only provided details for the regulated activities on a 2,554 square foot area. In fact, the regulated area is 281,132 square feet. They can't provide just details on less than 1/10 of that area. Everything they're presenting is in a regulated area. They need to refile the DEP form because they only reported on that 0.06 acres of upland review area. And again, they have approximately 6.5 acres of upland review area, which again changes the DEP requirements. As Alexandra noted, the proposals regarding sedimentation during the construction process are woefully inadequate. Those need to be addressed to be consistent with the state guidelines, with the detention, I may be using the wrong terms, but the detention areas in multiple silt fences and inspections and the other requirements for a project of this size. If those fail, this is upgrade from a wetland, and the area is gonna have no vegetation on it. It's all gonna flow straight down the hill into the river. It needs appropriate sedimentation and erosion controls during construction and inspection, and they need to present a plan showing that. there's 12 pipes draining into this wetland or water course. It appears that only one of them may have been permitted. That has not been addressed. Before they want to do their next project, they should fix their existing projects. Again, those are discharging water into here and flooding out this area and spreading invasive species and causing erosion and creating all sorts of other issues. The detention pond or rain garden by the turf lacrosse fields, which again discharges into the same area, has not been maintained. There's a tree growing in it. It's 1/3 full of sediment, which is contributing to the runoff entering this area because it's not being detained in that pond. A condition of this should be that they comply or with the maintenance procedures for that. If it means they have to dredge it out so it functions again, they should dredge it out and function again. The discharging of the microplastics and the leaching of chemicals is, again, there may be a dispute among the extent of those chemicals, but that is all, there's no dispute that those will be leached out, and that's all occurring into a regulated area. And what makes this even worse is, as Alexander explained, where the 8 Cultec chamber is, that's going to be below the groundwater table, and that has no retention or detention pond to absorb these chemicals. So it's going to be going straight into the groundwater table. If that water runs down the hill, it's again going to go straight into the river. It's also going to hit the groundwater table again, where it hits the artificial spring in the severely eroded intermittent water course, the artificial spring there. As I mentioned before, there's a physical destruction of the wetlands and water courses occurring by the erosion in the intermittent water course. It's extreme, and that has to be addressed before this board permits any discharges into that. There's a destruction of the flora and fauna from the runoff, erosion, sedimentation, and turbidity. I presented photos showing the turbidity. I've presented photographs and videos showing the speed of the runoff and erosion. It kills everything in that river. You've heard before about all the sediment that's collected there. As Alexander testified about the 10 or 11 inches of sediment that's collected down the bottoms. Not only invasive species can grow. That sediment is washing from that intermittent water course, and this issue needs to be stopped. Seems like there's some confusion about whether or not the Cultec chambers can be moved or not moved, and this and that. As Alexander said, some of these chambers can be moved so they don't have so many in the same location. They could move them so these are not in the regulated area. They could move I don't know what you called it, but the box the pollution collects in out of the regulated area. They could move these underground so it's not visible above ground to where there's better soil so you don't have these drainage issues. And that would not affect what wetland this drains into. Would still head, if anything, went over the surface down to the same wetland, but you'd be discharging into better soils and you wouldn't be discharging pollution into a regulated area. This board has to consider the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activities and the long-term impacts. We discussed those on June 3rd. I'm not going to go through those again, but it's very clear that as presented, this is going to have adverse impacts on the environment unless they take actions to remediate this and to ensure that there's not a flash flood of stormwater, which they're working towards, and they've improved their plans on that, but there's still questions. And there's also questions, I said, about where it's being discharged and the appropriateness of it. As we discussed at the June 3rd meeting, this board has to consider the possible impairment of safety, health, or reasonable use of property, as well as the possible impairment of public health, safety, and welfare. By allowing this to be discharged down that hill into that severely eroded intermittent water course and into an area where everyone agrees that the culvert under the road can no longer handle the capacity, it is creating a dangerous situation. There are alternatives to discharge it easterly. Mr. Mann said he has to be concerned about discharging onto a neighbor's property. I would agree with that. But here that's not proposed. As was proposed at the June 3rd meeting, we'll be piping it so it goes across where the disc golf course is and reconnects to the river. So it would cut off the section of road where this erosion sedimentation is occurring, would cut off my driveway, would cut off all those driveways along if you're heading up from the Merritt along the left, and would rejoin into the same river. And the only property it would cross is the town's own property. So there are not concerns of other neighbors that would have to be addressed in that. Because all they're doing is moving it in a pipe, so it doesn't hit this affected area and rejoins the same river, just further down. Again, it's important to us that we don't oppose the project as a whole. But we're presenting our concerns in regards to the wetland or water courses to this commission. We don't expect them to address all the drainage concerns. We weren't aware until the last 2 weeks that there's been apparently discussions between the town and the state for a decade on issues here. I appreciate that, Mr. Mann said he'd work with the state and with us to address these issues. His word carries a lot of weight. And we have concerns regarding the drainage and the flooding that impact the wetlands and water courses, including via the channel destruction, the erosion, the killing of the wildlife that lives in the small pond below our property. When it floods, everything in that gets killed. The destruction of the plants. We've presented photographs of that, the uprooting of enormous trees, the turbidity, the sedimentation. I presented photos of that. After a heavy storm, there's not just sediment across the street, there's sediment all over my side of the street that you can shovel off with a shovel. And the spreading contaminants. And these are our concerns. Our concerns are not.
Let me ask you, when you talked to Mr. Mann, did you bring these up?
Yes.
Okay.
We're not terribly far off. It sounds like we are.
Sounds like.
It certainly does.
It sounds like we are, but
okay.
I'm not at the point where
So while we're on that, let me just ask, because you just said, I don't oppose this. We don't oppose this. But clearly, we've heard, I have 3 pages of notes on opposing every single piece of this. I'm going to ask a question. I would like a yes or no answer. You've sat here. You've asked the same question. You said about 10 minutes ago, this issue needs to be stopped. I've shown you the videos of the water on my property. So this project moves ahead or it doesn't move ahead. That does not stop the issues, correct? Yes or no?
the drainage issue is not the issue necessarily before us.
Hang
It's
on.
the wetland
The issue needs to be stopped. You referred to the videos.
The issue
So
being
if
the
this project
sedimentation and erosion.
If this project is denied and doesn't go forward, town does nothing. That does not stop your issue, correct? It's a simple question.
If the town does nothing, will it stop the sedimentation and erosion?
The water flow that you said is the issue, the videos that you showed us, where anything would be killed. You were very emotional about it. So if this project didn't exist, that issue would not be addressed, correct?
The distinction is.
Yes or no, please.
I'm not answering that as a leading question.
Oh, okay.
The distinction is that right now it's occurring. And I could go to the board and seek an enforcement action to stop it. What's being requested is a permit to allow it to continue. And I'm saying that instead of granting a permit that allows the discharges into that channel that is causing the erosion and sedimentation, there should be conditions placed on it. And if those conditions, and we don't oppose the baseball field, but we oppose this going forward without conditions that would address the
Wow,
environmental
that could have
impacts.
been said 2 meetings ago. Thank you.
No, he's right. You know, a lot of this is repeating. A lot of it could have been said a long time ago. Is anyone over there, would anyone like to discuss any of this at this point, or what are you gonna say?
We should let him finish, I would think.
I think he's finished, isn't he?
I was finished. Our
I'm sorry.
concerns relate to the
I thought you were
wetlands, not
finished. Yeah.
not so much the drainage issue, which is related to the wetlands, but it's an independent issue.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things that I'd like to say for the record, based on all of the things that I've heard from all the experts on your side. A couple of the comments, the reason I'm talking about speculation is the commission, there's a lot of legal standard regarding speculation. So I did personally hear a lot of speculation tonight about what might happen should storm erosion controls not be put in place. On any project that comes before the town, there's standards that are put in place with soil erosion controls. And if there were special conditions that embraced or elaborated on the need for additional soil erosion controls from the applicant, I'm pretty sure the applicant would be able to provide that in their construction documents. So I don't see a lot of what Alexandra had put into the record as things that could not be addressed or accommodated. We'll see what the applicant has to say on that. To your engineer, as far as the DEP, there's a standard condition in every wetland license that requires any applicant to go and seek all other necessary permits, whether it's local, state, federal, and so on. So whatever the requirement would be, it's the applicant's responsibility to seek those permits. It doesn't affect how this commission might rule on the application that's currently before it. As far as the upland review area.
Can I say something regarding what you said? I agree that you are separate entity. However, if, let's say, the drainage has to be changed because the EP is not going to be accepted the way it is, then the changes may be significant, and then they will have to come back to you. So instead of going back and forth, I think it's better just to make this project better and addressing those issues rather than going back and forth.
It's the applicant's choice. So that's typically what's done. They start at the local level. As you know, you've been in the job that I have in another municipality. Typically, they will start at the local level to seek the local approvals first, planning and zoning and so on and so forth, and then go on to what the next level might be. So I take your point, I understand, but it is the applicant's decision. There's nothing regulatory wise that requires them to go to DEP and obtain those reviews at this stage in the game. As far as the upland review area, I just want you to understand, Mr. Tashin, when the commission is looking at this application, even though Mr. Segan, focused in on the areas that are specific to the 50-foot review area, the plan is for the whole site. So they are looking at it as a comprehensive plan and potential impacts. Otherwise, why would we have a fully developed plan? We would have only part of the field and part of the planting area. They have the complete plan. So all of the upland review area is being reviewed as part of the overall proposal.
Their plans show an upland review area of 2,554 square feet and a regulated activity area of 2,554 square feet. That calculation is off, and they continue to say that they're staying out of the regulated area. The regulated area in this case, because of that definition, is the upland review area of 281,000 square feet. So all those lines and statements and calculations on their plans are off as a matter of law.
Anybody? Or we want to wait on this and then,
I think they should come up and respond
yeah.
if they're ready.
We're ready.
Are you ready?
If you're done answering the questions, if you're done with the intervener, then you'd like to come back, answer a couple of the questions. And then...
Oh, fine. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm not sure who's sharing their screen right now. Luke, it might be you.
It might be Jim.
Okay, but Jim, can you stop sharing your screen?
Working on it,
Okay.
working on it. That button. Looking for the button. Where's the unshare?
Tell you want to start. I don't know. Huh? I think you guys should start. Then I'll come in.
Stop share, found it, sorry.
Tiger?
Sure.
Luke said you're close. Are you close? Is this, I mean, this doesn't sound close to me, but maybe I'm wrong, we're wrong, but, so I'm curious there.
Well, Luke and I had a very good conversation today, and we plan on having another one offline with our consultants and his consultants within the next week or so. That's one of the reasons why we'd like you to continue to hold the application or hold the public hearing open, because if something comes about from that and you close the public hearing, we can't offer that in as a change. So so first would be to not close the public hearing this evening, carry it over, since I don't believe you're going to come to a decision tonight anyways. So we're looking at next meeting, which is
15th.
July 15th. July 15th. Thank you.
We don't have a meeting in August.
Hopefully we can resolve it by July 15. Our goal is to resolve it
We
by
can have
July.
a special meeting too, but go ahead.
So I think that's first would be to hold the public hearing open so that if, I won't say if, I'll say when we 'cause I'm always an optimist, when we come to an agreement, there'll likely be a revision, if you will, to the plan set or to project moving forward. And then we can then offer that into the record for the commission to review and hopefully approve. So with that said, the interveners, I don't like the word intervener, the Tashians and Bernalis Luke and Beth have some concerns. We share their concerns only because we're the town and they're a resident or residents, I should say. There are some portions of their concerns that can be addressed within this project and some that cannot or should not be, if you will. There's certain parts that, the watershed is huge, as we showed, that the area that we're working on is small, comparatively speaking, to the large watershed. So there's issues about the drainage on 106 that the state has to share. Can't be burdened. The project itself can't be, in my opinion, can't be burdened by that. But there are mitigative measures that we can do in the project to satisfy some of their concerns, even to the point of Ms. Mock's comments about sediment and erosion. That's first and foremost in my mind. That's what I used to do for a living when I first got out of college, was exactly that, was sediment and erosion. I was an environmental engineer working for the state. So that's first and foremost. And then there's other concerns that we have on that southern ditch, if you will, that are really not part of this project, but is part of the overall town, if you will, right? And which would require some further study and some further review and then a further design that is well beyond the scope of this project, because we're reducing the flow to that channel, if you will. So that's one area still that the town should address, but the project itself, this project shouldn't be burdened by that. That's something separate, if you will. My opinion again, but I feel strongly in that regard that we're not, we're lessening the flow to that area. So we're actually mitigating it already. And then, our comment and my comment to Luke was that we would sit and try to figure out that channel, because that channel was new news to us, its condition, and, it should be addressed by the town. So we will go forward and address that, but it'll require McCord to help us and Bill Kennedy to help us in a larger plan for that area. But, our commitment is yes. So
And I will join those meetings when it's appropriate, because I agree with your comments regarding the ditch does need to be addressed. Clearly, there's some issue that's occurring in that ditch. It should be addressed, but not connected directly with this project, because it is separate. So I appreciate the town, now being aware of that location and then, taking it on as another project. But as a staff person in the wetlands, I imagine at some point in time, whatever that solution is, will be coming back before this commission. So,
right,
absolutely available for future consultation, I guess I should say.
Appreciate that. So to get back to your first question of are we close? Yes, I believe we're close given those parameters, right? There's certain aspects of their concerns that we need to revisit with the state. They're saying that they're close. I have to call Mr. Roulette and a couple of other people at the state and find out, are you close? And if you've hired a consultant, we'd love to sit with them, because that was news to us as well. We've been contacting the state for well over a decade. You know, the plan that we showed from Land Tech was from 2006, 2007. So it's about 18 years that we've been working, and to get to that point where we would actually commission a study of that magnitude, we had been having problems for 4 or 5 years prior to that, if you will. My tenure with the town only dates back to 1999. That was the exact same time that Mike Pastor, the previous director and the previous town engineer, dated back to. We started at the exact same time. He instigated that, or initiated that study. I can imagine it was from, my recollection is about 2002. So about 20 years we've been dealing with the state on that issue. Will we continue? Absolutely. So there's certain things that we can do in this project, certain things that we'll continue to do with the state, and there's certain things that we can do on our own, the town, if you will, not necessarily this project, but the town. And so that's why I think that, yes, we're close, if you will. I'll agree with Luke and say we're close. So we met prior, and we'll get Bill and Harry and Mike and Josh with Jim and Miss Mock, Alexandra, and then we'll hopefully have a meeting of the minds, so then we come back to you on the 15th. We have revisions to this plan and a path forward, if you will. We can answer some of the questions that they've addressed already, and then we'd like to then take some time to kind of delve in, because it was an additional 30 plus pages that we'd like to review. I don't want to say we're all done on this, first go, but we can answer some of them just from, what we've heard at present, and then plan to address them more fully by the 15th, and taking into account that we'll meet with them, I'll say offline, but we'll meet with them in between now and then, so we can come to you with a revised plan and hopefully a path forward, as I said.
Are there any projects that are urgent? Are there immediate? I mean, can you divide them that way? Urgent, not so urgent, but you'll get them done? Can you break this down into a few projects instead of one? Or I think you said that.
Right. Well, there's in my opinion, there's three. This project, the channel, and then the overall drainage concerns from the Tashians and the Bernallis. And he actually mentioned some maintenance work that's along the 106 corridor. We'll have to look into that and see whether or not my forces can do it, or DPW forces can do it, or I'd have to involve the state. We'll be speaking to Kathy about that as well. There's some cleanup of some debris and what have you in the channel that's directly across the street from the Tashian and Bernallis, from Luke and Beth. So, first and foremost, this project, one, will reduce runoff in and of itself, right? So that's actually going to have a positive benefit, not only to the channel that they're concerned with, but then for the overall project itself. And, we'll be increasing our water quality, right? And then our retention. So that's not going to just help the Bernallis, but it will also, then the Tashians, but also help everyone else downstream from Jelliff Mill onward. Because if you look at the watershed, everything wants to go to the river. Everything wants to hit the dam at Jelliff Mill. That's where it all wants to go. And those residences that are along Jelliff Mill are the ones that get hit even harder than the Tashian and Bernallis, because everything congregates right there. So our focus has been primarily down through there and then working its way through the watershed. So in that regard, this project will have a positive impact on on everyone downstream, and the wetlands that are directly adjacent to it because of our increased water quality, and the treatment train, if you will, that Bill Kenny spoke of. So that's one project. The other one would be this channel, and then the third would be to work with the state on the overall look of the I'll say the 106 corridor, but the 106 corridor leading down to Jelliff and beyond. So if I divide them up into that regard, that would be the three. And what takes precedent? We have one in front of you right now that is very pressing in our opinion, to move forward with. Is the Capo Field one. There's a definitive need. There's a definitive want. There's town monies involved, and there's a substantial amount of money from the residents themselves. The residents are actually, showing their concerns with their checkbook, if you will, directly, to the order of 2/3 to 1/3, actually greater than 2/3 to 1/3. It's a $6.5 million proposed project, increasing the drainage well, actually, we had $675,000 worth of drainage improvements planned. That was at the 25-year storm event. We get to the 100-year storm event, we're going to increase that by 50%. That's going to drive that number closer to $1 million. The town is still at 2 million. That comes onto the donors, if you will. So that's now a 2 to
So
5.
when you come, there's no argument
Mhm.
about not closing the meeting tonight. Okay,
Mhm.
we're gonna carry it over.
Right.
Do you agree with that? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah, I
agrees
would-
with that?
This
Yeah.
gives the opportunity for applicant to finalize
Yeah.
or make the revisions that they would need to make. Because there seems to be some open questions, but you guys listening to the testimony of the interveners, it seems like there might be some fixes that could be tweaked. It sounds like that's what I'm hearing. I don't want to put words
Exactly.
in your mouth, because I know you need to look at it a little bit
Mhm.
further. So yes, I would say keep the public hearing open. Carry it over to July 15th. If we need an extension of time, because we may be asking, we may need an extension of time. I imagine the town will grant the extension of time, the applicant will grant the extension of time. And then as far as getting any revisions in prior to the 15th, I would ask you to shoot for, at least 4 or 5 days in advance so that it can be distributed to commission
Mhm.
and to the interveners.
Yes, yeah, so sooner than later.
Yeah.
That would be our goal as well. So, so to answer your question, yeah, I look at it as a 3-pronged approach, if you will. The project itself before you, this other project with the channel, and then working with the state on the overall watershed, if you will, or the 106 corridor. So that'll kind of give you that idea. I'll let Mike and Josh and Harry and Bill kind of answer some of the overall questions or the more pressing ones that came up, and then we can then delve a little bit deeper into their testimony before you, and then what they had sent us today, earlier today, that we can then answer, and we'll give you an answer in writing to that, and then hopefully add in some other commentary from Luke and Beth and their consultants prior, if you will, but prior to the July 15 meeting. So you have anything?
Just regarding a response to the regulated area, our interpretation was we took the strict interpretation of the 50-foot setback, and we understood it was up to the discretion of the commission and the director to change that regulation. Assuming that Luke and the interveners are correct, we'd be happy to change the activity plan to extend to the entire project area. The point being, though, and I think Kathy Holland mentioned this, is we've presented the entire site and all the activity on the entire site. So in essence, we've been doing that anyway, and we'd be happy to change the plan to reflect those numbers. And there was one comment about, the trees in the area of the storm drainage system. And I think I mentioned a couple times that we're going to tweak and finalize that location so there would be no conflict. So that's the comments that I was going to make. Harry, I don't know.
Hey, can you hear us? Can you hear us? Okay, good.
I'll start with the stormwater management comments. First, claim for the flood routing data. In our opinion, we modeled our HydroCAD correctly. It was designed with tailwater dynamic routing. It was flood elevation set. It was reviewed by the town engineer and approved by the town engineer. So in our professional opinion, that model is correct as displayed, and as it showed the decreases in runoff to all points of concentration. We agree with what Kathleen said regarding the state general permit. We typically do like to do those after getting local approval. We don't foresee any issues with our plan as it is a pretty extensive design, and that permit will be, submitted in due time. Regarding the water quality volume of the detention system, I think Maria summed it up pretty well, and I will just reiterate that. There is an outlet control baffle in our outlet control manhole that holds back the runoff from the detention system. Maria mentioned the orifices in it. That is where we designed our water quality volume below. As Jim had mentioned, there is an outlet pipe on the other side, but runoff can't get to that outlet pipe until it reaches those orifices. So our water quality volume that we are reporting, which is about 50% of what is 50% greater than what is required, is the volume stored below those orifice elevations. So we maintain that we are providing sufficient and more than sufficient water quality volume within our underground detention system for the impervious area that we are routing to it. Regarding the ENS control monitor, 100% agree with that. Something we typically work out with the contractor when we get to that phase. Furthermore, on our sheet C200, our erosion control sheet, sorry if that's not the exact title, but on that sheet of our plans, we do state in our notes that the erosion control measures shall be inspected at least weekly and after every storm event. If anything is noticed or any, if it's determined by the design engineer, myself, or the contractor that further measures are needed, we will coordinate those with town staff and implement those measures promptly. Again, that is on the current drawings. We further delve into when we get to the CD phase and have a contractor on the project. The statement about groundwater getting into our stormwater detention system, we have a curtain drain essentially outside of our system on the cut side of the field where we did hit those groundwater levels on the left field side. So the idea there is we're setting this pipe below the collector pipe for the stormwater. So theoretically, water will get into the groundwater will get into that pipe first and be discharged away from the field. So we are only collecting that stormwater. That groundwater will continue to move at all times. Obviously, the stormwater is only going to be collected when there is storms. So we're pretty confident that the our groundwater measures around that side of the field will be disconnected from our underground detention system that we are proposing. I think I touched on the hard pan layer earlier. I know that came up again. And we are setting our system at least a foot above, as we commonly practice in New Canaan, have had great success with that method. Then the proposed ENS measures are not sufficient. I think I just touched on that, but I'll reiterate. We believe they're sufficient at this time. The field will be fairly flat. It's only a 0.5% across. I do understand there's a slope at the end, but for most 90% of the project is almost dead flat. So we think those measures are sufficient, but as I also mentioned, we're going to keep an eye on them. And if anything else is needed, we will make sure that that is implemented and coordinated with town staff and the contractors.
Harry, before you move on from that point, this might come up in your construction details, but phasing. So, maybe 1 acre and then reestablish, as you can.
Yep.
Or implement additional soil erosion control. So you break up that larger area so that we don't have that wonderful storm that comes along in the middle of it.
Absolutely. And thanks for the reminder on that, Kathleen. And Maria actually mentioned that in her comment letter as well, that she's requesting a construction logistics plan to be coordinated at the building permit level of phasing. So that will be forthcoming and that will be worked out with the contractor. So everyone's on the same page and, drawings aren't being, revised multiple times. So that will certainly be worked out before construction commences. I think that was all for me.
Want to discuss briefly the synthetic turf and the potential environmental issues surrounding that. And I am not an environmental chemist, I'm a wetland scientist, but what I would like to put into the record is information that we all learned from our experience with the turf that was the field that was recently proposed up at St. Luke's, and some information from that. So that there's a neighbor immediately downstream of that that has the potential to be significantly impacted, and that's the First District Water Company for the city of Norwalk, and their reservoir is within half a mile or less immediately downstream. There's existing synthetic fields that have been there for over 10 years on that site that drain into that stream and discharge out. So that, and a new field was proposed. The water district very concerned. So they hired their own expert people that deal with synthetic turf on a regular basis, LEPs, licensed environmental professionals from Weston and Sampson, professional engineering firm and environmental engineering firm. And they closely reviewed water samples and found one that they don't have an issue today with contaminants in their water system, and that they closely reviewed the project and said, if you do this, this, and this, we're comfortable with this and we're not going to oppose it. And here's, that's a water company. So they, that the school in that case agreed to do that testing, and they use certain materials, and the town with this field is agreeing to do the same thing. Also, it's been interesting, I've been in the business over 30 years, and I can't believe there's a new water quality manual, because I feel like it was just yesterday that the other one came out in 2004. So it's been 20 years that manual's been out. Synthetic turf fields have been forever a question mark. People ask questions about it. The new manual does not have a whole chapter on synthetic turf fields and recommend, saying if you're going to do a field, use a special BMP or do this or do that. It's certainly a high profile item, and they chose not to cover it. But that being said, there was another neighbor on the St. Luke's project, and they did a bunch of research and came up and said, use bioretention as a treatment practice. And that is what's being proposed here with that basin, the vegetated basin, where we collect water on the surface and let it go through the plants and the leaves above ground and the roots below ground and the soil. So with all those things being said, yes, I'd like to submit for the record some correspondence between the First Water District and your board. So we'll submit that before the next meeting. And then just quickly, some other things. I think that a big thing that we need to keep in mind with some of the discussion about the effectiveness of some of these treatment practices, like how quickly does the Coltech system drain, when that again is being used for the very infrequent larger storms, a 1-year storm, 5, 10, 100-year storm. The vast majority of the water that is going into the water quality basin. And so that, and all of these things drain out within a 1 to 2 days. Even the massive system drains out within a couple of days. So the chances that you get you get back to back when the statistical chance for that is very rare. And you would have those conditions without these DMPs in place. And so I think for the vast majority of storms that deal with water quality are those smaller storms, and they're being handled easily. If there's a overflow into the bioretention basin, there's plenty of storage for those smaller storms in the detention system. So I think that you need to take into consideration the frequency of these events. And just if you think of them occurring back to back to back, that certainly can happen, but the chances of that happening are very minimal.
Do you have companies standing by to start working on the diamond, or are somebody in a holding pattern, or can you wait till next year or before you get this done, or what are you thinking now about?
There's a definitive concern about funding should the project not move forward at its current rate. So if we don't put a shovel in the ground this year, that it's likely that the funding will dry up.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Are they playing on the stadium, on the field now? Are they playing there now?
Well, the high school season
The
is
high school.
over, but the youth Babe Ruth leagues are playing on it, but
I
we can
see.
certainly bring them off of that at that time. The plan is to be under construction from August through the fall, and then be ready for the spring season for the high school. That's the current plan that we've been pushing very hard as a design team for quite some time to meet that deadline, if you will. And we've met with at least 3 turf providers. We've narrowed it down. And once the bid documents are complete, we'll go to them for a final number and then bring it through to the Board of Selectmen for approval, contract approval, what have you. But we need to discuss with this commission first and then P and Z as well, because any concerns that this commission might have or the planning and zoning, we'd like to have prior to bid issuance, if you will, or documents that therefore we don't have to ask for a revision, and then a revised number, should there be a substantial change. But we are pushing quite hard. We're going to be with P and Z next week, I believe, for the first read, and then hopefully they'll follow suit with an approval at the following meeting. We were hoping for one meeting and to be done, but if they cannot close until you close, so we'll have to wait, which is fine. But no, this project needs to move forward at this point in time, or we'll run into we will likely run into funding problems.
So we'll continue. Anything else?
Not at present. We'll, like I said, we'll listen to the testimony from the interveners and review their comments and come back with further comments. And in the interim, we'll meet with Luke and Beth and their consultants, and then advise Kathy on that talk, I should say. And then we'll be back on the 15th.
All right, well, thank you.
No, thank you.
We're going to continue the public hearing until the 15th, and I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much.
Tiger, what time did you get up this morning?
It's important in yours.
Yeah. What, like?
Well, it's a semi-final. 4-hour drive. So I'm leaving bottom of the 6th inning to get.
Roll out your bunk under your desk. Okay.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Night.
See you guys.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, do you want me to just go
Yeah,
over these
let's
couple of
go.
things? So let's see, what do I got? Three administrative wetland applications were processed last month. If you want to take a look at those items, I can answer any questions that you may have, but they're
Cutting your eye.
administrative, all administrative. And that's all I have.
All right, good.
Katie, before you leave us, are you available for the July 15th meeting by Zoom?
I am not sure. Can I check and email you tomorrow, Kathleen?
Absolutely. Thanks.
Okay, perfect.
And Sandy and Beth, you're both available for the July 15th meeting? You are, yay.
There's a possibility I may not be.
Not even Zoom?
See that?
Listen, I'm not trying to pressure.
I have a friend who's having a surgery that day, and I
Oh,
think I'm gonna be
I got it.
responsible for bringing her home
So we'll,
that night.
stay
I
tuned.
mean, so
Okay, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to
so we don't
adjourn?
need to go over this, right?
Do you want to go over anything?
or no, over what?
The three.
Oh, if
need
you
a
had any
second.
questions for me.
What?
We need a second. Give me the motion to adjourn.
All right, I second it. All those in favor? Aye. Motion's adjourned. Turn this video off.
Thank you, guys. Good night.